following podcast contains spoilers and adult language and some shimmer.
Shimmer!
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. Evil is coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
This week we're going to be discussing the season 2 finale of The Last of Us. So sad, it's the finale already.
Aww.
Title of this episode is Convergence, and this was episode 7 of the second season. I can't believe, like, this went very fast. And if you think it's extra fast, people, you're correct, because it's one episode less than season 1. But, yeah, before we get into our points and discuss, there's a lot of details, there's a lot of stuff that went on in this episode. We got plenty of things to chat about, questions for how things left off, how we think next season, how we think the season as a whole went, so we got a lot to cover. But before we get into details, let's just do a quick rapid fire how we feel about the episode itself. And Steve, you went first last time for episode 6, so it is my turn.
Ooh, ladies first.
You know, and we were just talking before we got started recording, as we do. We are champion jibber jabbers. So overall, I really like this episode. I think I have some questions, and I don't know if they are game questions, like things that people that played the game would know, how, you know, the flow of a certain thing is, or what have you. So I have some questions. There were some things that felt off or strange to me, but they didn't ruin the episode. I didn't have anything that really ruined the episode. Just a couple of things that made me go, huh? And maybe you can shed light, or maybe you have thoughts or ideas. I felt it was super tense. I felt like this is the first time in quite some time. In fact, I can't remember a time I watched a show where I had no idea what would happen with any of the people at the end of the episode, and that it would be as cliffhangery as that. Because, you know, that gunshot, it could honestly be anyone. Or everyone. I don't know, because all bets are off. As soon as Joel was killed, and that was real, and I wasn't like hallucinating while I was watching television, then that means, you know, there's no fear. You know, there's no fear to follow. I mean, yes, that happened in the game. I did not know that. But there's no fear in following the storyline. They're here to serve the story. So I don't know the fate of all the other people in the game, so since I don't know, and since I already know they've already exhibited they're not afraid to make sure they're following the path of the story, really anyone could have died. And so because of that, I was on the edge of my seat the whole episode. And really had no idea what was going to happen next. It was, you know, it was nail biting. It was all those stereotypical things. I think I literally opened like a bag of pretzels and had a drink next to me, and I didn't touch it the whole time. That's always a good sign. If I get snacks and then you look and you're like, ah, damn, my ice all melted and blah, 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 because I was just too transfixed and didn't stop to do anything. So super, super solid finale. I'm excited for there to be a season 3. I'm scared to have to wait as long as that, because people are going to speculate and they're going to talk a lot about stuff, and I really don't want to get spoilers from the game and stuff like that, so I'm going to have to shut my eyes to a lot of things. But I think this is a really solid season. I'm really excited to see where they go. And yeah, I it's not my favorite episode of the season, but I think it's super solid, and it's a really great finale for season 2. So what are your thoughts on episode 7?
Yeah, it was okay.
It was
you know.
How do you say metza?
Yeah, how you say pile of crap? No, no. I like we were talking about it. I really liked it. I thought it was good. I thought, just from a gaming standpoint, there was a bunch of stuff that was pulled from the game. Um, I think it, like I said, I told you that, once once I was corrected on the number of episodes per the season, because it had to be like week 4 before and I'm like, well, there are 8 episodes, and you're like, there are only 7. I'm like, what? you know,
That was a humorous
yeah.
moment, I must
But,
say.
once that happened, and you correctly, showed me the error of my number of episodes, and based on like how far they had gotten into the plot of the game, which at that point was not very far, I'm like, well, there's
Right.
no way that they can. They're certainly not going to finish all of it, so which means they're going to split it into at least two seasons this season, and it had been already picked up for season 3. So it sort of made sense to me, like, well, that's like a really where this episode ends, that's a really good stopping point,
Okay.
and so
Okay.
so it certainly kind of followed what my expectations were about that, are they going to just try and finish it somehow really quickly or no, and they
Right.
did kind of what I was thinking they were going to do. So
Oh.
and yeah, there was there was a lot of good stuff in there. There's some good lines, and you're right, it was very tense, and we got just a little taste of Isaac, right? A little bit of Jeffrey Wright, which is
Yeah.
always makes everything better. And so yeah, like I said, overall, I was enjoying it a lot. I was definitely a little sad as I'm watching it, and kind of what you just said, which is like, thinking, well, we're not going to have new content on this for like
Yeah.
18 months,
Yeah, at
minimum, yeah.
Unless they spend some money and they really push forward,
yeah, yeah, right.
But I don't know.
So and it's like, I'll believe that when I see it. I just think you're looking at it's going to be 2027 probably when we get season 3. Yeah, right. It's like, I'm not getting any younger, people. Hurry up.
Right, I will officially be fully into my 50s
Oh
by
my
that. Like
God.
right now, I'm just 15.
And I
know.
will officially be dead. Okay, that's what I'm saying. All right.
So, HBO, get your shit together. Clearly, this is a cry for help. We need
Right,
it.
and I mean, they're too busy
yeah.
changing their name again.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh my God. But yeah, like I said, I was right there with you. It is very tense. Maybe a little less tense for me, because I at least had some idea of who could not make it. Much
Right.
more so than you do, because you've never really gotten into the video game very much. So maybe not quite on the edge, as far on the edge as you were, but it still is very tense. There's no doubt.
Excellent. So good. All right, well, let's first, before we get into our individual points for the episode, let's talk a little bit about the episode description that we were given, the scant episode description, and then our stalwart writers and director for this episode. So, Steve, that's your...
It's Jam or
Yeah.
Madobe, whatever. All right, so the episode again is 2.7, and the title is Convergence. And the description that we have is, amid the battle between Seattle's warring factions, Ellie's search draws her toward a devastating confrontation. And that is your episode description, and I will say that, yes, you can kind of see that happening in the episode.
Those things sort of happen, yes.
So.
Yeah. so let's talk writers and director for the episode.
Sure. Well, we'll really just talk director, because the writers are the same 3 writers from last week, which was pretty much the same 3 writers all the way through, one way or the t'other. And that's all of these showrunners, Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann, and Haley Gross. And, again, just for the umpteenth time, Craig Mazin is the TV guy, and so he wrote almost all of the television scripts, either by himself or in conjunction with the other 2. And Neil Druckmann and Haley Gross, they wrote the original story for the video game.
Right.
And of course there, Neil Druckmann is the guy who created the game in the first place for the video game company Naughty Dog, and that's where Haley Gross was working at first as well. So that is your writers, and then our director this time around it's a newcomer, and it's this gal named Nina Lopez Corrado. I'm not sure how you pronounce her. She's one of those hyphenated last name people. And
so hard.
I know. But anyway, she has a ton of directing credits that in the last 20 years really, and she's worked on shows like The Night Agent. If you saw that show, that was, I believe, a Netflix series that has been out for a couple of seasons. She worked on FBI International, which is a big CBS show. If you remember going back a few years, there was a show called A Million Little Things.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Which I think ran on ABC, and I think it was like Ron Livingston plays this guy who I think kills himself, and the rest of the show is his friends trying to figure out why. And so it's a lot of flashbacky stuff, kind of similar technique to like what we're getting on a lot of shows now, but back then it was kind of more, ooh, never seen this before kind of thing. And she was actually a co-executive producer on that show, which is interesting. And then she worked on like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Supernatural and The Flash. And again, there's probably about 25 different shows she worked on. The other one I would mention is she was also directed episodes of The Mentalist. And she was also a co-producer of that show as well. So she has a little bit of producing credits to go with her directorial stuff as well. And I thought she did just a really good job. I think like you said, the parts that were supposed to be tense and suspenseful were tense and suspenseful. And so
they sure were.
Right, and so that's a job well done. And I think she put she had some interesting choices in there. There's one little shot in particular where there's a lot of shots of people walking where you just see their feet. I don't know if you picked up on that, but
no. Yeah.
And there's a bit where when Jesse and Ellie leave the theater to go to the rendezvous, like to the bookstore where Tommy is supposed to be, there's a scene where they're walking and they walk right past or right over, and there's like a pile of like hypodermic needles.
Yeah,
on the ground.
I did see that. Yeah.
And it's and I'm still I was gonna kind of tool around on the internet and kind of see what other people think that means, because that is not in the game at all. And I'm just like, what is she saying, that like Seattle has like a massive drug problem? I don't know, but anyway, it was little things like that she put in there that were they were different and eye catching, and they were usually in slower moments where they weren't being chased or in a fight or whatever. It was much more of a kind of a talking moment or something where nothing actiony is going on, and it makes you wonder like, well, what that mean? So but yeah, so that is who our writer and director is, and again, I think everyone good job.
Yeah, well done. So there was no cold open this week, just previous scenes, and they went right into the opening credits, as it were. And then right after that, we get what a great sort of like wrenching scene. It's we jump right into Jesse helping Dina with the arrow.
You could say they get right to the point.
Oh boy, that was terrible. But it, there's a great, as soon as the moment happened when he offered the whiskey to her or whatever, and she was like, no, and he's like, are you sure?
He's giving her side eye.
Want it?
Yeah. She's like, I'm fine.
And she was so intense. And it was so like she acted the shit out of that scene. She was so good. It's that we got to move fast. I got to pull that arrow out, and he had to do it the opposite way, because if he pulled it back through with the point, he was afraid he was going to tear muscle, and if he pulls it the other direction, he can, it can be clean, because then it's just the hilt of the. Oh my God, just. that was what a tense like way to like start the episode, you know. But that was really well done. And then
and there were no strings attached.
Yeah. Yes, there are no. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of all the arrow puns I can right now. Keep going.
Yeah, no kidding. Terrible. Stop.
Well, you can't hit the bullseye every time.
Yeah. And then my first note that I put in was they had the radio on at one point, and I think this is after Ellie got back. And she's at the radio, but your point happened, I think, before mine did. Because Ellie gets back, and there's a really great moment where Jesse's like, "What's the name of your horse?" She's like, "Shimmer, let me in!"
Yeah. You know what? I think, because I just rewatched it today, and I'm pretty sure, actually, the bit you wrote down about Isaac and everything, that happens right when they're pulling the arrow out. It's before Ellie gets back. Because the episode opens up, and we just see the walkie-talkie sitting there, and it's on, and we hear some of the chatter, and then we
say
hear
radio silence Isaac's orders.
Yes, yeah. And you kind of get a little bit of the wolves, you know, talking for just a little, and then we hear we hear Dina either kind of scream a little or grunting, and like he like has to like rip open her pants a little to get at the wound, and just doing that and the arrow moving, she's like in agony and screaming, and then we're off and running on that scene. And yeah, I just love when he's like, you know, I can't pull it out because I'll either tear a muscle or sever an artery or something, has to go forward. And she's like, "You're not a doctor." And he's like, "I know what I'm talking about," you know. And she's like, "No, you don't." And then he's like, "Will you shut the fork up?" Because he's just like, we're doing this, okay? Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of choices here, and I have to make the choice really fast.
Right.
So shut up, we're doing this.
Yeah, but again, you're right. She gives him a lot of clues, because she first of all says, "I can't die." Right.
Yes, she does.
Not that, and he even points that out. It's not "I don't want to die," it's "I can't die." And then when he offers her the flask, because he's like pouring the whiskey like on the arrow shaft to kind of try and sterilize it, and he pours, and some of it runs in her wound, and she's it's got a sting to, you know, high heaven. And then he offers her some to drink, because again, they have no painkillers, right? They have no pills or anything. You know, she's not like taking oxycodone or anything. And then you're right. She's like, "I can't. I don't want any." And he's looking at her like, "You, like the greatest party girl in the history of Jackson, Wyoming, is turning down a free drink." You know, so he kind of knows. He you know, he's smart enough to go, okay, something's going on. And of course it'll come back up in a minute, but yeah, that radio chatter does start there, and I guess they're talking about the invasion that the wolves are going to launch like that night.
Yeah. And I mean, they've got all their tactical. They were already saying, it's funny too, like, but I think they maybe understand that that's how they got, because you got to figure they have to at this point know that there was a breach at the hospital and somebody was there, and yes, because Nora ran and she's like, "Intruder."
When they shot
and
at
they don't
Ellie.
know who it is, but they think they probably think it's someone who knew where she was based on the walkie-talkie.
Could be.
So because they were so flagrant about their plans that I don't think it's the Seraphites they're trying to not listen to. I think they suspect someone has a walkie-talkie, and yep, maybe it is one of the Seraphites. But I think because of that breach at the hospital, another H word. That's how I interpreted it. I interpreted it as they know that there's some other small like thing happening that has not related to the Seraphites, and we think they might have a walkie-talkie, so just to be safe, let's not broadcast right now.
Yeah.
Let's, you know, radio silence, whatever. So and that's how I interpreted it, that they normally, because they were giving everything away before.
Right.
Because they didn't think anyone was listening. So So lazy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right, yeah. I couldn't remember. I thought somebody was actively using the walkie-talkie and heard it, but now that you said that, that does make sense. It was sort of in the foreground of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
They do the arrow thing in the background.
Right.
So you hear the radio silence thing, and then we sort of dissolve over to Jesse and
Dina.
and I was confusing it because once Ellie is back with them, she does try to listen to the walkie in a scene afterwards, but there's nothing happening on the walkie.
Yeah.
Because they've already done the radio silence thing, she just didn't know it yet.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So they, he smacks the arrow out. Then we have Ellie gets back, and like you said, she's pounding on the door because it's like pissing rain, right?
Yeah.
Typical normal Seattle day, right? And
Yeah.
and he's like like basically running the passwords to her, before he'll let her in. And then, like you said, he goes, "What was the name of your horse?" And she's like, "Shimmer, let me in," and so he does. He lets her in, and she just asks, "Is Dina okay?" And he's like, "Yes, she's in the dressing room." And she then just leaves him there, and he's like, "What happened to you?" And Ellie is just, "Nope, gonna go talk to Dina. That's kind of where I want to go right now." And so they have this great moment where she looks at Dina's wound, and then Dina sees that she has blood coming through on the back of her shirt, and so I did kind of have a little head scratch moment because Dina gets up and spins around to a sitting position, and I'm like, man, you think that would just hurt so much to move that leg even a little.
Yeah, because I've done small injuries where you have a little bit of I pulled my back, and you go to get up from a laying down position. You'd be surprised how many muscles you use in that moment. And I've had the same thing with your shoulder hurts, your knee hurts, your calf, your foot, whatever it is. You use all to be able to get from a flat position to sort of sit up. It takes a lot of different muscle groups, and I thought the same thing. And she didn't even really make a face.
Yeah, I know she didn't. She just, it was just like, "Here, move, move, sit down." And I'm watching her, and I'm like, she has a hole in her leg, right? and right through all the meat and everything, and she's just moving around like, "No problem." But anyway, she does, and Ellie takes off her shirt, and you can see her back is all bruised and scratched and dirty, and so she Dina kind of washes her back with this, this little bowl and a cold compress that she obviously had for her, and they have this kind of, little moment where Ellie, basically says she found Nora, and I know you wrote down the first part of the line where Ellie is kind of saying, I got her to talk. And it was awful, but I did it, and it was easy to do.
Yeah, that's the hardest part of that whole scene is really when I think when there's the two. I mean, she said the thing about it being easy, but then what she says back about when Dina asks if she got what she deserved, it's that's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
heartbreaking.
Yeah, and she, and Ellie just, is very truthful on the whole thing. She just, she does not shy away from or sugarcoat it. She basically says, she tracked Nora down, and she beat her until she, talked about Abby, and then Dina's like, "Did she say where Abby is?" And she said, and Ellie goes, "She only said two words. She said whale and wheel." And Dina's like, "What's that mean?" And she's like, "I don't know. She could have been. She was turning, and she was, clearly infected with the spores. So maybe it means nothing, right?"
Right.
And then there's kind of this lull, or maybe at that point, then she, Ellie is so remorseful about this. I mean, she's just like shell shocked. She's kind of like
Yes.
thinking about what she did, and not only what she did, but how easily she did it, and I would guess
Yes.
probably how much she probably liked doing
Liked
it.
it.
The
Yeah.
power and so on, and I mean she's horrified at her actions, um and that's when Dina tries to kind of help her out and give her support by going, well, maybe she had it coming, and I Bella does a great job because she kind of whispers this response of maybe she didn't,
Yeah.
and but then after that, then Ellie finally comes clean to Dina and explains what Joel did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tough scene, because she's telling Dina basically like Dina went on this mission on thinking that Joel is a fully an innocent person who was killed that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that they still don't deserve some type of retribution, but it's different. It really does paint everything differently to Dina. You know what I mean? She put her life on the line, and she was willing to put her life on the line because of how she feels about Joel.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see like she changed. Her
Oh,
face changed.
she did.
Her
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
changed. Yeah.
And then she says, like, basically, she says, we need to leave.
We need to go home.
We need to go home now. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
other thing is that Ellie is like, absolutely, like, yes, we do.
Yeah.
It's very much, I think, the difference here, conceptual versus reality, where when Ellie started this, revenge drive, it was all kind of theoretical of I'm going to hunt all these people down and look them in the eye and kill them. And, when you're just thinking about it, yeah, oh, they're going to get what they deserve. And then when you're actually standing in front of them and you're doing it and they're begging for their lives and all this stuff, it's a totally different ball game, right?
Yes.
And Ellie, throughout this whole episode, and I think this is part of there's been a lot of backlash, I would say, on some of the choices that the showrunners have made.
Yes.
And a lot of it is that Ellie in the show is much more it's like they're going out of their way to really try and paint Ellie as a good guy. And she, yes, she's killing these people and it's horrible, but she feels really, really bad about it, And in the game, I can tell you that's not there. That she doesn't, you don't really hesitate. You don't, it's just you kill them. When you come across these people, you kill them.
Right.
But here, she clearly is like, you know what? I've come to Seattle. I've hunted down some of these people. I've killed them, and I think I'm good.
Yeah. I don't think. Let me put this. I see how if she were portrayed as, I don't want to say cold, but less remorseful in the game. Let's put it that way, right? I can see that there's, there's backlash over like she's being portrayed a certain way, but to me, and obviously I'm coming at it from a different perspective, having no exposure to the game. To me, I feel like what it's really highlighting is that she can't help herself. Her emotions get her so fired up and so out of control. And I honestly think that a lot of that emotion, to me, it reads less as remorse over the person that she did this to, like say, whatever, Nora. She didn't feel remorse for Nora. She felt remorse for herself, that she was able to do those things. So it's kind of a different thing. So her empathy it's almost like she surprised herself. Hence the, it was easy.
Yeah.
Continuing to hurt her was easier than she thought it was going to be. And I know the way the later scene with Mel and Owen, the way that's played, and I think that there's regret a little bit. I don't know, like, and maybe I'm just parsing it to make it make sense the way I saw it, but to me it didn't make it seem like she's remorseful to the person that she did that to. Like, if she could shake them awake and say I'm sorry to Mel, you know what I mean? It was less about Mel, and to me, that's just to me how it read, was that it was more personal regret, you know. So I don't know. So.
Yeah, it's real interesting, and I think I can talk about this because I've been thinking about this since we've started the season, and I think enough has been revealed that I'm not letting too many cats out of the bag here. That, you know, one of the things that and again, I think it's brilliant. I think it's really dangerous. What the people who are telling the story are doing, and this is just with the game, and so this is Druckmann and Gross, and what they do is that they, you know, the game opens, Joel gets killed, Ellie's on the revenge mission, Ellie goes to Seattle, Ellie spends 3 days in Seattle hunting down, trying to get to Abby, and she, you know, in typical story fashion, you never find Abby first, you always find all of the minions around Abby, but you're getting closer, and she does, and then just like we see, you know, when those two are Owen and Mel are kind of like the final two friends or co-conspirators of Abby, and then at that point you go back to the theater, and you found you know, Jesse has found Tommy, and everyone's there, and you know you're either, I can't remember, either you're going to go out and look for Abby again, or you decided to leave, and then Abby shows up and Jesse gets killed, and, you know, and she shoots, and the gunshot happens, and, you know, it literally smashes to black, and then it comes up just like here, and we're back in day one, but now we're going to live these 3 days through Abby's perspective and see what Abby's life is like since she killed Joel, and all of her friends and the relationships with her friends. And some of those relationships are not that great, you know, based on what they did, you know, and what she, you know, made them do, and how easy it was for them to do it, and all these things. And you come away from it where Ellie wants to put everything in black and white. Her whole universe is black and white, right? There's us, there's me, and there's them. There's me and you. It's us and them. It's, you know, my community, everyone else, whatever. And, you know, as she, I think, is finding out now that she's out and she's getting her hands dirty, the world is actually very gray, right? And all these people that in her mind are bad people and need to be, you know, there needs to be justice or revenge. But when you actually get into these people, they're complex, and it's not as easy as that, and they have their reasons, and what we're going to learn when we watch Abby here in the next season is that Abby and Ellie kind of the same person. You know what I mean? In that both of them had their father killed by the other. By the other's father, I should say, or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like Abby's father was killed by Joel, and this has spurred her on this revenge mission that her friends go with and help her to do, right? And the response then from Ellie is, because, you know, her father has been killed, is she's going to go on a revenge mission, which all of her friends are going to help her with, right? And it even goes so far as to two of her friends, one of them is pregnant, right? Both of you have Nora, or you have Mel, and you have Dina, and then you also have the Owen character, which is very much like Jesse, and that Owen is kind of a good guy and does the right thing, and, you know, is what did she call him, Saint Jesse or whatever, you know, very similar.
Jesse of Wyoming or whatever.
Yeah. So, and very similar, and again, what was the dangerous part is that, you know, you're playing the game, and Abby is being set up, you know, not to get ahead of ourselves, literally as the monster at the end of this book. And when, you know, you start playing from Abby's perspective, and you start learning about her relationship with her dad, and you start learning about all these other people, and how, you know, this event has affected them, and you find out that, you know what, they are just like Ellie and her friends, and Dina and you know what I mean? Did they do a bad thing? maybe, but in their mind, it's justice. Just like what she's doing is in her mind, she's not the bad guy. She's getting justice for Joel, right? And then you
Right.
even have Dina going, maybe she got what she deserved, right? But now Ellie's like, maybe she didn't. And that's a real dangerous thing to do when you take your bad guy that is clearly the bad guy and then you start making them sympathetic.
Right.
And you start questioning and raising at least the possibility of, wait, is Ellie maybe the bad guy here?
Right.
And I think that's what we're gonna get for next season. And I think it's gonna be great. I love Caitlin Dever. I think she's a really good actor. And I think she's going to be great as Abby, and we're going to get to see her living these 3 days. And I mean, I got to tell you, I mean, her story is unbelievable. I mean, it's just as crazy as Ellie's what happens to her.
Okay.
And like in the scene with Isaac, I would point out that they say Sergeant Park is in that scene, right? The woman whose
Yes.
son died in the hospital, and
Right.
they point out that Abby and all of her crew by day 3 are missing. They've all gone AWOL. Right. So
Right.
what does that tell you? Right. What's going, you know
Right.
what I mean? And so yeah, I mean, Abby has an incredible, crazy, unbelievable story if they follow it, from the game like they followed Ellie's journey. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Like I said, I think Caitlin Devers, it's going to be fun. I think everyone should kind of brace themselves that season 3 of The Last of Us, you will not see a lot of Bella in it.
Okay.
My initial thought would be if it's 7 episodes again, I could see them doing like a 5-episode recap of Abby's 3 days, and then
Right.
2 episodes of what happened after the gunshot rings out.
Right.
So we'll have to see. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
But yeah, it's and it just the only other thing I would just say about Caitlin Dever and the character of Abby is that. And I don't know how much of this you've seen online, but Abby in the game, clearly that girl, like, we were talking about, like, what do you do during the apocalypse, because a lot of the things that we would normally do now just aren't around anymore. So you're kind of like, what is there to do, right? And
Right.
Abby in the game, that girl decided to go to the gym. Because Abby in the game looks like Linda Hamilton from Terminator 2. I mean, she's got guns and shoulder. I mean, they're just, and in the opening scenes in Wyoming in the winter when they're all wearing jackets, you don't really notice. But for most of the Seattle stuff in the game, Abby's wearing like a wife beater T-shirt. So the shoulders and the arms are there. I mean, she's got bigger arms than I do, which is not saying much, but I'm just saying, like, damn, that girl's big, But she's so she's kind of got a little masculine look to her, but she's absolutely a girl, and you know what I mean? And it's a real interesting choice that they decided to make her buff in the game. And then obviously they either went to Caitlin Devers and asked her if she would do that and she said no, or they just didn't bother. I don't know, but
I think I read something somewhere where they were talking about they just loved Caitlin Dever as an actor and thought that she brought everything they needed emotionally to the role.
Okay.
And they knew she was going to physically look a little different, but they made that choice, and they specifically chose her for the acting ability, and they just took the buff thing and just discarded it.
Yeah, just yeah, it's fine. We don't need it. Yeah, and like I said, I agree. I'm not at all. It's not going to ruin my enjoyment of her playing that character, even though every time I look at her little spaghetti arms and I'm just like, yeah, that isn't Abby. But
yeah.
Anyway, so
no, that's good information. So Ellie does come back. She has her her moment with Dina. They do the whole, like, I think they sleep a little and wake up, and in the morning, that's when they hear on the radio there's something about the No. I'm so sorry. I take that back. There's nothing on the radio
No.
because there's radio silence. They decide to leave because they have a preordained rendezvous point.
Right.
Jesse and Tommy. So he's going to head out. Dina is nervous about Ellie going, and then of course Jesse's like, if you don't want Ellie to go, I'm fine going by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both like, no, she can go. Because I think Dina needs some time in her thoughts about the Joel situation and all of that and how she feels about Ellie. I think the most important part, which we didn't really discuss, but the most important part in that thing with Dina and Ellie when she found out what Joel had done was she was and Ellie was being truthful when she said, "Do you know who those people were?"
Yeah.
When they did what they did to Joel, she had to find out who they were, that they were the Fireflies from that hospital from that time 5 years ago. She didn't know when it was happening. And Dina just needed to know that, because that makes a difference. Because it means Ellie didn't keep anything from her, just the only thing that Ellie kept from her was the Joel portion.
Right. Yeah.
She knew about Joel's stuff.
She knew that Joel killed everyone at the hospital.
Right, but she didn't know that those people were connected to the people that they were the people at the hospital.
Yeah.
She just did not know.
Yeah.
So there's some tension, but Dina still wants to sort of live in her thoughts, and she's like, no, you can go. I'm fine staying by myself.
And she gives her her bracelet.
Which is nice, because it's like a moment of like, you feel like there's a change between the two of them and something's different and may not be able to be retrieved. It's hard to say. But in that moment, there's a tiny bit of hope, because she puts that bracelet on and you feel like, okay, she still cares. And, there's a nice little smart ass moment. She's like, for luck. And she's like, it didn't work for you. She's like, I'm alive, aren't I? And Ellie's like, yeah, about that. Sorry. She's trying to be a smart ass because that's what Ellie does.
Yeah. Well, and
in a tense situation, she makes a joke.
Ellie says something like, I don't believe in luck, and Dina goes, I do. and that moment is right out of the game too, by the way. That happens. It's not, we don't quite get the close up that the show gave us, but it does happen when they leave the theater in the game. So yeah. Yeah.
And they do make it to the bookstore, but there is a quick moment where they are, they're trying to get in out of the rain, and they're like under like a highway overpass.
No, I think it's like a parking garage or something.
Yeah. And so they're in someplace concrete with like openings, etc. So they're sort of waiting out the rain, and then there's some gunfire and they have to take cover. And it's not intended towards them. There's actually a couple of wolves that are chasing after this young Seraphite. And they chase him into this garage area where they are. And there's this really brutal scene where they take his clothes off of him.
Yes, they do.
Which is so demoralizing when you already know you're going to torture and probably kill this person that you've caught. And there's this great moment where Ellie and Jesse are hiding, and Ellie really wants to jump out and help this kid. And Jesse's like, nope, Ellie, get back here. And she's like trying to say, like, it's a kid, and he's like, nope, no. And then finally, like, there's this like sort of final moment, and Ellie can't take it anymore, and she jumps out from behind, and she starts going towards there, and Jesse's like, Ellie, because trying to keep it down. And he tells her, first of all, no, we can't do that. They can't announce where we are. That's all very stupid to do. But he also makes a point. You put it in your notes, I put it in mine. It's so important for the rest of this episode. And it says a lot about, Tommy and Jesse wanting to just get in, get Ellie and Dina, and get the hell out. And Jesse says, this is not our war.
Yeah.
And it there's so much weight in that, there's two things there. The Seraphites and the Wolf War is most definitely not their war. But Jesse and Tommy are there to help get them out. and the Joel thing is also, it's like it can't be a war. It should be this one for one retribution. We're not gonna like walk through a war zone to avenge Joel. That just mathematically doesn't make sense.
We'll never make it.
So yeah, absolutely. You know, they're just a handful of people, and they've got these armed people that are going up against each other, and there's history there, and who the hell knows, you know, what's going on with those two. It's none of their business. It's absolutely positively, you know, we're not looking. It's none of our business. We're just going to try and find our guy and get the hell out of here.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's and you know, I think if you listen to the closed captioning or you watch the closed captioning, when they chase the wolves chase that kid in, they're like saying, "How did you get behind our lines?"
Yeah.
And so it strongly suggests that the scars have some ability to kind of infiltrate, you know, the areas of the city that the wolves would think they're firmly in control of, right? Which makes the war even more nightmarish and ambushy. And you know, there's no home front, there's no safe area. You step out of every building and you could be killed, you know, which is even more of a nightmare, right?
Right.
And I think also too, right before that happens, Jesse makes Ellie tell him that Dina's pregnant.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, I'm not an idiot, you know, she said I can't die, not I don't want to, and then, you know, she turned down, the girl who never turns down a free drink in her life refused to take some whiskey before I pushed an arrow out of her, you know. And he's like, she's pregnant, right? And then Ellie goes, ah, crap. And then like the look on Jesse's face, like, oh shoot, I'm right. And then she's like, wait,
she's like, oh God, you were guessing.
Yeah, right, you know, it's like, oh no. And then she's like, you gotta act surprised when she tells you, you know.
When they got to that point where Ellie was like, oh my God, you were guessing, I was like, how much more can go wrong for Ellie in this past like 24 hours? It's really been, she's had, you know, not to steal from another child's book, but she's having a no good, terrible, very bad day.
Yes.
No good, horrible, terrible, very bad day.
Yeah.
So she, you know, not the least of which is she's the one that let the cat out of the bag about Dina being pregnant to the guy that is the father of the baby.
That is the daddy.
Good job, Ellie.
Yes, good job.
Yeah.
But now that kind of, and I think there's a point in there where Ellie's like, look, I don't want anything to change between you and me, Jesse. And he comes back with, you know, everything's changed and yet you don't want anything to change. You know, basically saying, look, it's too late. Everything has changed, you know. And he points out that I can't die now because I got to get my, you know, my unborn kid and the mama of my unborn kid out of this war zone, and I have to live so I can raise my kid, you know. So again, it's like everything has changed. Everything has changed from where it was. And you know what, Ellie? It's all your fault.
Right. Right. And it's and then right after they have that moment,
boom,
where it's like, you know, that's when they have the moment with the firefight and the Seraphite, and he really drives this is not our war. Like, we have to get the F out of here, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I you know, I know she's, you know, she is very emotional and she yells right back at him about how, you know, he's the good person and the selfless one and you know, and he even tells her you're selfish and all this stuff, and she is making her argument about, you know, Joel was her community and you know, I had to watch him get, you know, killed and all that stuff, and like, woe is me, and this is why we're doing all this, and you know, she does a good job and she makes a valid point, I guess. You know, I mean, she's got a good argument, but I'm sorry, I don't know about you. I wanted to ask you, but in that conversation, I am totally 1000% on Team Jesse. And
oh God,
and it's just like, look, kid, I understand, you know, Joel got killed and that's awful, and you had to watch it, and that's even more awful. Excuse me. Still getting over that darn cold. But yeah, this is not the place to be right now. You know, that we're literally between these two groups that are at war, and it is like the most brutal, merciless war there is, where anybody they find, either side, they're going to kill. there's no negotiating with either side. You can't be like, hey, whoa, we're just passing through. No, if they find you out there, either side, they're going to kill you. And they're everywhere, so yeah, it's just, like you said, it's just the math doesn't add up that if you keep going forward on this revenge mission, most likely we're all going to die. I mean, so yeah,
Yes.
and so I just wanted to add, and I figured you would be on Team Jesse too,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, and I think they try really hard to make Ellie's argument convincing, but I'm just kind of like, yeah, no, I'm going to customer service. I'm not buying that. So
It's funny because even before in that episode, like way back when they went to go leave for Seattle,
mhm.
and they showed the growth of the wolves. They were like, they showed them with like lots of
The
armor, lots of guns. There were lots of them,
mhm.
I didn't believe any of the stories that they had heard, like sort of through the ranks, where they're like, oh, it's not a lot. And, they're going off of conjecture
Yeah.
in so many different ways. So I didn't believe that. But then you get that visual. And from that moment, I'm like, this is terrible because this is only two people going against that.
Yeah, right.
And yes, it's one-on-one because she just wants to kill Abby and, hurt the others or whatever the hell it was that's the plan in her head. So it's one-on-one, but there's still, you've got it, but to get to Abby, you may have to go through all of those people, and you cannot. And then adding in Tommy and Jesse, they're both fantastic, you know,
Mhm.
soldiers, as it were, but they, it's a numbers game. They're just not going to make it.
Yeah.
And and Ellie is just so consumed by revenge and her sadness over Joel that she can't see it, and it's almost like you have to shake her,
Mhm.
And Jesse almost has that. Well, he almost has to like shake her and give her like a smack across the face, like, wake up.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And we need to get Tommy and get out of
Right.
here.
Well, and we have to get, your wounded, girlfriend, this woman that
Yes.
you clearly have very, very strong feelings for. She's like
Yeah.
seriously injured right now. And, it's not
Yeah.
safe for her either. And I like, you just use that phrase of you almost have to slap Ellie in the face to get her to realize that.
Yeah.
And I think Jesse does when he tells her point blank that he did not vote yes at the town
Yeah.
hall, right? And
Yeah.
that, I mean, Ellie is kind of, because Ellie's like, if just like two more people would have voted with you, we would have gotten a group together, and we would have been easier. And he just lets her have it and says, I voted no. And she's just like, what?
Yeah. I suspected as much. Just the way he was carrying himself,
Hmm.
that whole vote. I think he was pleased with the outcome because he felt like it's a waste of resources, and it doesn't, and like he was saying in this episode, it just doesn't support the community.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? So yeah, I wasn't surprised that he was a no. I was surprised he told her.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I like you said, Ellie is so hard-headed, and I mean, with Ellie, it's all about Ellie always. And the idea of like the greater good, is just not, it's just something she doesn't think about at all. And she also doesn't happen to think about consequences all that much. She just does what she wants to do and kind of damn everything else, right? And so
Yeah.
this is like his way of like trying to be like, look, you have to take a moment and grow the hell up and think
Yes.
about somebody else once before in your life. And he tells that great story about how the group came through on their way to Mexico City, and this is when he and Dina were on a break, and he
Yes.
met this girl, and he really liked her, and he says it's the best 2 weeks of my life, and he says, like, that feeling when you're falling for someone and they're falling right back, and he's like, the girl didn't want to stay in Jackson because she was with her family and her friends, and she felt obligated to go with them, and he didn't
Right.
go with them because of what he felt he owed Jackson, because Jackson took him in and raised him and made him into the person that he is, and like he says, I'm the one that's supposed to take over. You know, I'm the next
Right.
Maria. I'm the one that's going to be running this place. So I can't, do that. And of course, Ellie's response is this smart ass, you're the saint of Wyoming and so on. And he just kind of goes, yeah, well, if I had gone with her, then who would have saved your ass last night? And basically throws it
Exactly.
right back at her that, like, yeah, it's the whole reason that I'm acting selflessly is why you're still even alive at this point, you know. And
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
And it was nice too because a lot of her stuff, she gets so angry where she's like talking about like, oh, you're such a community guy, and she's like, fuck the community, and he's like, well, if it wasn't for that, you'd be
You'd be
dead
dead, yeah.
right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Cold hard facts. Yeah. If I had gone with them, I wouldn't have been in Jackson when you left and decided to come after you and then found you in that warehouse with all of those stalker people infected about to rip you to shreds and saved you.
Yes.
Yeah. And not only would you be dead, but Dina would be dead too. And it's very like the cold reality of it going, look, you're lucky that I'm your friend and I'm as selfless as I am because you would not be here. Yeah, it's a real interesting scene because Ellie at times is trying to make it right with him.
Yeah.
But she gets like her dander gets up when he points out how selfish she's being, and she, like you said, very emotionally comes back at him, and I think, didn't you write down? Yeah, you did. You wrote down the line about what she thinks about her community.
Yeah, she does. And I get it. Like she's coming from such a place of pain and anger.
Mm-hmm.
And she every time Jesse's trying to school her, she like smiles and nods, or she takes in what he says, and like you were saying, it's almost like she takes 3 steps forward every time she sort of accepts some of the things Jesse's saying, but then she gets her dander up and she takes a leap backwards because she has an emotional reaction to a thing and can't help herself. And in this case, when they start talking about community, her big thing was, she says, my community was beaten to death in front of me while I fucking had to watch.
Yeah.
And she's so angry, she's like shouting at him. And here's the thing, she's not wrong.
No.
And Joel was her community for a long time. It was just the two of them, and you saw that in that flashback episode, that no matter what, those first 2 years or so, 2 to 3 years, it really was just the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
However, as that time went on, sure, they didn't stay together for long, but, she became friendly with Kat. Tommy is part of our community. Maria, their little one, Ben is his name, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse, Dina, these people are part of her community, and Jesse's trying to explain exactly that. His point when he talks about the girl, yes, the girl is important, but he makes a point about sacrifice. Jackson took him in and raised him. He doesn't have it sounds like he has no mother, father, going on, and that he had to depend on other people to sort of help raise him. And he was raised to understand, well, then you give back when that happens.
Right.
So a lot of people contributed to Ellie getting to Jackson, and a lot of people in Jackson contribute to her day-to-day life, but she's so pig-headed and so caught up in her own emotions, it's bordering on narcissism to a point, but even though she's not wrong that Joel was her community, but he wasn't her only community, is what Jesse's trying to counter with all the time.
Right.
So it's a great line from her, but it falls a little bit flat because you're like, well, he wasn't your only person, and it doesn't remove the devastation. It doesn't remove how terrible it was to lose Joel in the way that she did, but she should get the perspective of all those people at that meeting that were voting. They all lost Joel too. Mm-hmm. He was part of their community, and she just can't wrap her brain around that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's definitely like the emotional versus the rational in that scene.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I think too, we're starting to see some of the, Ellie's had enough killing and is kind of done with it in that scene too, because she is, like you said, gung ho to go try and save that kid, that Scar.
Yeah.
And like he literally has to like grab her arm and keep her from like charging. And he says there were 6 of them and there's only 2 of us. What do you, those aren't good numbers. If we engage those guys, we're probably going to be dead, but Ellie at that point I think she's so like, in her mind, she's like, I want to just save somebody. I've done so much death. I've killed so many people and violently killed them and tortured them, to get to this point. And it's too much. I need something good has to happen, right? And so even though I don't know who that kid is, and that kid would probably kill me if he had a chance, so on, I don't care. I'm if I can save him, it will save me or whatever, and Jesse is, literally like the reality check of like, no, it's not our war. These are not our people. And, all that stuff happens. And yeah, again, it's a really great scene, where you watch these guys rip the clothes off the dude and they drag him away. And you're just like, oh my God, help that kid. Go up, and yet, no, you can't. Because if we try and help that guy, most likely then we're dead too.
Yeah. It's funny because in that scene, you as the observer, you fluctuate between like, at first you're Ellie because you're like, oh yeah, because all you see is the one guy that's talking to the Scar, and you're like, they could do it. They could just, a couple of pops and they'll
dead.
Save that kid.
Yeah,
right. So in the beginning you're Ellie, but then when Jesse makes his argument, you're like, yeah, no, 6-2 is bad. And it's technically 7 because you don't know if the Scar is going to be happy that you saved him. He could stab you.
Yeah.
Right.
And the 6 have radios that they can call in even more people. Exactly. So yeah.
And that's it's not good.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ellie likes to jump first and like jump feet first into a situation and then figure it out after.
And then think about it.
And then Jesse's trying to hold her back from jumping is the thing. Yeah. And that's part of being part of a community, is someone looking out for you. But she's, like I said, she's just too emotionally in it to even recognize any of those nuances, right now.
Yeah.
So just to get back on track where we were, we've got the moment like we've been talking about with the Seraphite, and they do eventually, they get out of that moment. And, after Jesse makes his point about it's not their war, they do make it to the bookstore. Tommy isn't there, so they sit tight for a little bit, because they left a little stash of stuff there, and it's still there. So that means Tommy hasn't been back at all.
Right.
Otherwise, he might have waited for Jesse, grabbed his things, and went someplace else, is what I'm assuming. But they end up sticking around a little bit just to sort of wait it out and see if Tommy comes back. There's this great scene where, it's a bookstore, it still has some books in it, and Ellie goes right to the children's section, and we both commented on it. She picks a classic kids book, which is the Sesame Street book, The Monster at the End of the Book, with Grover. It's such a great book. Like, even as an adult, I'm like, that's a fun book. That's a really fun book.
One of my favorite books as a kid. And mostly, and I just have to say, just personally, Grover was always my favorite Muppet from Sesame Street. And that's why I just despise and cannot stand and physically want to destroy Elmo. Because Elmo replaced Grover.
Oh,
and I just have so many fond memories of Super Grover and, all of his crazy schemes and stuff. And that book was a huge part of it. So just on an emotional, like personal level, and I'm sure you're the same way. It's just we remember reading that book as a kid and loving it.
Yeah.
You know, the way how he like tapes the pages
You
together.
turn the page.
Oh yeah, all that, and then like he like bricks it up, and then you turn the page, and then he's like under the bricks, and he's like, "I really hate you," you know, and all of that stuff. But I think also what a brilliant choice, because you know, just with the message of that book and how it applies to this episode. And this whole story,
Yeah.
you know, that, like I said at the beginning there, the way it's set up, the monster at the end of the story, we're led to believe is Abby. And Abby is this, you know, inhuman cold killing machine that killed Joel brutally, and we have to destroy her. And yet,
Yeah.
when we get to the end, maybe that's not the case. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. Maybe they, and just like, you know, like when you get to, you know, the spoiler alert for the book, if you haven't read it, when you finally reach the end of the book, Grover is like, wait a minute, that, you know, the only person here is me. I was the monster at the end of this book, and that's not so bad. And you know, he's kind of making that, but you know, the metaphor certainly plays through for Ellie that, you know, maybe the monster that she is confronting at the end is not Abby, and maybe it's
Right.
herself, maybe. So yeah, yeah. But yeah, I absolutely love that moment. I love that book, and the fact that she grabbed it, and you know, even Jesse's like, "Hey, that's a really good choice. I wish I would have thought of it," you know. And
Yeah.
and it's also, it's kind of a little nod to the game because, like I said, Eugene's like secret weed stash in the game is in a library. And
Oh, okay.
so you and Dina are walking around on the top level, and there's all these books all over, and there's a children's section, and you know, you don't get the monster at the end of this book, but you do, I think, in the game, in the children's section, there's a giraffe, like a stuffed giraffe, and
Oh, okay.
you pick it up and you kind of look at it, and Dina's like, "What are you doing?" And you kind of tell very quickly. Ellie tells Dina about the giraffes that they ran into in Salt Lake City, and so it's kind of like a happy little callback to that fun moment from the first season. But yeah, so I enjoyed it on that level too. But yeah, I did. I wrote down love, love, love because I thought the metaphor was amazing and well chosen, and it's just a great book.
Yeah. I can't. I just picture Grover and the way he yelled. They
Hmm.
would have him like with his face tilted up, with his mouth wide open, and you can't see his eyes. And he goes,
Hmm.
"You turn the
Oh my God, what are you?
page."
And the whole book, he's like, "What are
What
you
are you
doing?
doing?
Do you not realize there's a monster at the end of this book?" You know, yeah. And I think
So
I
great.
seem to recall at the very end when he finally's like, "I'm the, you know, we're at the end of the book, we're at the last page, and there's no monster. The only monster is me." And then like on the back page of the book, it's Grover going, "And you were so scared."
Yeah. Which is so
Oh,
true. That's such a great book.
yeah,
A great, great
it's
book.
awesome, yeah.
Um, and then no,
I
go
had
ahead.
a
Go.
little note too that before she grabs the book, there's a shot of Ellie and she's kind of looking at the bookstore, and on the wall of the children's section in paint, you know, painted, you know, as part of the bookstore is this phrase that says, "Everything's got a moral if only you can find it." And again, I'm
Mm,
like, yeah, you know, Ellie, you should really read that sign a lot.
yeah. Yeah, but she didn't read the sign. She just went right to the, oh, this is a cute book that I can throw in my backpack and give to Dina
And give to
later.
my
And
girlfriend.
yeah,
Yes, yes, you're right. You're
yeah,
right.
exactly.
That was a message that was not received.
Yeah. And there's a really great, they're not in the bookstore very long. They have the book moment and then they're resting a little bit and they get to talking about Dina
Hmm.
and, and Jesse gets to talking about that girl
Hmm.
from
From
that passed
right.
through, and he tells his whole thing, and he relays it to Ellie because she didn't know the story, and it tells the whole thing that she decided, she's got to keep going. Does he want to go with her? And he really thought about it and didn't. And you included the quote that he says when he was like falling in love with this girl, and it's a really, really great quote because it's the one moment. There's two really good moments in this episode where Jesse and Ellie are feeling the same feelings at the same time.
Yeah.
And this is the first one. The second one is then right before the end.
Right before it, yeah, back in the
Yeah.
theater. Yeah, like I said, yeah, he talks about she was like an artist and she did all these landscapes and stuff, and Ellie's like, were they any good? And he's like, no, I bought 4 of them. You know,
Yeah.
and again, it's like the stuff you do when you're like he says, you're falling for someone. Like the whole world, it's like everything is great, everything's wonderful. And he says it's that, and I'm going to use my words, that forking feeling. When you're falling for someone and they're falling right back, and and you're right, it's like one of the few like happy moments that Ellie and Jesse have in this episode, where they're not at each other's throats, complaining about the other. Ellie's upset that he doesn't want to go gung-ho on the revenge, and he's upset that Ellie doesn't want to get the hell out of there, which is a smart move. And they're very antagonistic, and then they kind of have these kind of quiet moments where they kind of calm down, take a breath, relax, and are able to kind of find some common ground, and and remember that what, they're friends.
Yeah. They are.
Yeah.
And I'm glad like that they had those 2 moments in the episode. We'll talk more about the second one when we get to there, but this is a really good one where he's relating to her, because one of the things he says is that he's like, I love Dina, but I don't love her the way that you do.
Right, yeah.
And then that's when he relates the story about the girl, because he loves that girl the way Ellie feels about Dina and the way Dina feels about her. And so in that moment, they're both like, yeah, I get it. We're both in that like, wow, you almost feel in that moment like you two are the only people in the world. And I know that sounds like really trite and bizarre, but it's like
it's true
in that moment. But it's totally true, and you feel like nope. And the other thing that you feel is nobody has ever felt the way I feel right now, right? And then, but also when Jessie says that, and she's got like yeah, I know exactly what you mean. She's in that moment, but she's actually agreeing with Jesse too, which was nice because he's been talking to her about emotions for the last like few hours. Mm-hmm. You should feel this way and you should feel that way about, Tommy, your uncle, and, he has your cousin back that, all these people who care about you. And finally he brings up something else that's very emotional to him, and she's like, yeah, I totally understand what you mean. Finally, she's like in those same emotions as him.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But it's brief. It's very brief.
It's very brief
because this isn't a TV show about love, people. I don't know if you know.
It's very tough love.
Yeah. And speaking of tough love, it's about to become tougher.
Yes.
They've got the walkie with them still, so that if they start to jabber on the walkie, they can try and help pinpoint. And then even though there's radio silence, someone breaks the radio silence because they're being ambushed by someone. There's a sniper. Mm-hmm. They call it out.
Not a scar.
And they're like, it's not a scar. And Jesse and Ellie look at each other and they're like, it's got to be Tommy. Yeah. It's Tommy. Mm-hmm. It has to. They say the position of where they are because they need backup. They call in for backup. Mm-hmm. And so they flip the map open immediately. And, the pier that they mentioned, they're like, okay, it's got to be one of these 2 piers that they're talking about. Okay, great. And then they're both like, let's go. We're going, grab your stuff. And they do the smart thing. They're going all the way to the top of the building that they're in to get a better look at where it is that they need to go. Mm-hmm. They get up there. And when they do get up there, they are both looking at the piers. He's looking at the one that he thinks Tommy is at, and Ellie is looking at the other one because she looks through the binoculars and is like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. Because it's an aquarium and there's a Ferris wheel, and she's like, whale and wheels.
Well, and there's a big whale painted on the side of the building.
Yeah, so she's like, whale and wheels, yep. Whale and wheels. And he's like, I'm sorry, what? Mm-hmm. Tommy is over here. What are you looking at? And they're both, and she's like, we wouldn't be able, then she starts talking about like, we're going to do this next. We're going to so obviously go there now. And Jesse's like, no, we are so obviously going to go save Tommy.
Right.
Because he's pinned down and he needs help getting out of where he is. I need to go here because Abby's over there. We need to go get Tom. And it's like they're speaking different languages again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that moment happens about the community.
Yeah.
You know, where they're angry. You know, he says, you're so selfish. You do everything just for you and whatever. And then she makes her comment about my community was beat to death in front of me while I watched. And it's clear that they are not going to change each other's minds.
Nope.
At least in that moment, Ellie understands Jesse, because that's when he reveals the thing where he said no in the vote as well.
Yeah.
When they're at the top of the building, that's when he reveals that little tidbit too. So once she sees that she's not going to be able to change his mind about going to get Abby because he's too responsible and too much of a community member, you know, and she's like rolling her eyes, he's going to go for Tommy no matter what. And Jesse understands it doesn't matter. Tommy is her actual family, and she needs to go after Abby.
Yeah.
She cannot see anything else other than Abby. And the way it ends is so well done. He just immediately says, I really hope you make it.
Yeah.
And then
just walks away. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's all he can do. He can't expend any more energy on Ellie when he knows that it's futile. She's not going to change her mind. There's literally nothing is going to change her mind. You know,
yeah.
And it doesn't matter. You know, she literally just 5 minutes after finding a book to give to the love of her life, she's willing to risk all of that just to go on this revenge mission.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Right. Because Abby has to die. Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, she tries to throw this, you know, her like logic of like, you know, Tommy would do the same thing. You know, if it was him. Right, he would go after Abby, and you know, Jesse is just like you said. He's like, no, we have to go help him. He needs help. You know, he's got a couple guys pinned down, but they're calling for reinforcements, so he's gonna need our help. And she's like, well, when the reinforcements show up, he'll pin them down too. And he's like, no, how can you say that? We have to go help him. You know, which is the correct. I agree. That's what you do, right? Because you know, she doesn't even know for sure that Abby's there. You know, she just has a lead, but you know, we don't know, right? And as it turns out, Abby's not there. You know, so
yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, I mean, she is so, like you said, she is so obsessed and can only see, you know, I have to kill Abby and then it's over and then I can go and we can get out of here and do all these smart ideas that you have, Jesse, but I have to kill her. That's why we're here. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. And you're right. When he, you know, when she, you know, is basically saying that, and you can just see like he looks at her and he's just like, okay, I really hope you make it. And then he doesn't say another word to her. Yeah. And is gone. And that moment, again, straight out of the game. I don't believe it happened. It's not really, the bookstore isn't really a thing, but there is a point where they're out and I think they are looking for Tommy, and then they receive the radio call, and at that point he's like, we got to go, and she's like, no, we got to keep going towards the Ferris wheel, and literally he's like, you know, good luck, you know, I'm gonna go help Tommy, and so he leaves, and so then the rest of the game, for up to that point, you're just playing as Ellie, and you no longer have a companion there to help you out at all. So yeah. It really is. It's like a you know, their paths like diverge, you know, and the fact that they don't end up like shouting at each other in the end just goes to show like how much more emotionally mature Jesse is, because he just disengages and is like, this is a waste of time and effort. Yeah. I'm never going to change your mind. I gotta go. Never going to change your mind. And goes. Tommy needs my help. So yeah.
Right. And I need to go now because it's just going to be one of me trying to help him out.
Yeah.
So we do have they go their separate ways. Ellie goes down to the waterfront and tries to grab a boat because as she said, a boat will get there faster because it's a little further away. It would take a lot of walking on land.
Mm-hmm.
And there is like a small pier right near where they are, and there are a couple of boats. Then she sees the wolves like sort of putting together this sort of like water assault thing. There's a bunch of other boats coming, and she sees people get on them. She's hiding and watches, and then they go off into the the storm, because there's this big storm going on, of course, at the same time.
Yep.
And then she gets down to the pier, and she gets into one of these, it's just a small
little dinghy.
Yeah, it's like a small little dinghy with a little motor on it.
Mm-hmm.
And she heads out towards this pier, towards the Ferris wheel.
Well, no, she actually doesn't. She follows the boat, all the assault boats that are heading to this island that is in the opposite direction of where she wants to go. And it's very, I was a little confused by that. And I think in the little featurette, they, I think either Haley Gross or Neil Druckmann talk about how they had conceptualized that sequence for the game, that Ellie goes to Scar Island, and the island is like where the Scar's like home base is. And this is Isaac's big, play to end the war, right? Is that they're going to invade this base and just, kill them all, I would imagine. And so Ellie goes to the island instead of going to the Ferris wheel, to the aquarium. And the only reason I can think about it, why she did, is that maybe she thinks that Abby is in one of those boats. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't go. You go ahead. That's fine. I took that scene a totally different way.
Oh,
yeah.
well, go ahead. How did you think it went?
Well, she went. I didn't see her following the boats. I just saw her go off toward that pier, and the wave hit her, and it pulled her to the island. I don't think she was heading toward it. She was near it, but she wasn't. That's how it read to me.
Okay.
I didn't see her as going anywhere near the island. She wanted to go to the Ferris wheel. That's just how I read it. But regardless of what her intentions were or whatever, she's looking for Abby. She ends up being washed up because she gets hit by the wave.
Mm-hmm.
She ends up washing up on the island.
Right.
Unintentionally. That wasn't. I don't think that was her plan.
No.
So she, the Seraphites grab her, and she's just about ready to be sacrificed when there's a loud horn that blows as some sort of warning, and they're like, the village, and they go, because they were just about to cut her midsection open.
That woman, the like lead Seraphite woman, she had that sigh ready. And they'd strung her up a little, they hadn't, like, they had her like on her tippy toes, right? So yeah, it was not good for Ellie. It did not look good at all. And Ellie's like, I'm not a wolf, I'm a stranger, and they're just like, we don't care. They're like, does not matter. Anyone we run into at this point, we're just going to kill and assume that you're part of the wolves. You know what I mean? It's just like,
no kidding.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. She's like, I'm not with them. They're like, yeah, it's still a net positive for us to kill you.
Exactly.
So we don't really care.
Yeah. So sorry, it doesn't really make any difference. Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry. So they cut her down. She's the luckiest son of a bitch in the world.
They cut her down. Did that not seem to be a little too unbelievable? I mean, don't you think they just hang her and leave her, right? They might not have time to cut her open, but they'll just string her up and leave her. That's fine. But instead, they just like drop the rope and she falls to the ground.
Yeah, this was one of the scenes that I had problems with.
Mm-hmm.
Because other than one sort of small visual from like towards the very last moment of the episode, I don't know why this scene was there. I don't know the purpose of, because let's take that whole scene and take it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say she's heading towards the pier, and she hits rough water, and maybe she gets knocked out of the boat and she has to swim her way to the pier. Like, make it so that it's not easy. Like, she had this boat right there with a a motor that started on 2 pulls, son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
so she was able to just go right away, and they threw some adversity in there for her. But if you take that whole scene out, let's say she's heading towards there and she sees the explosions anyway, the stuff happening in the village.
Right on the
I
island.
I don't know what was gained in that scene with the Seraphites.
Yeah.
We've seen that death scene before, so we
Mhm.
know that that's how they kill people.
Mm-hmm.
So that we didn't learn anything there, and they let her live because they had to go save their village. So I don't know, and I wasn't scared that she was gonna die in that scene. I was more scared in, some confrontation with Abby or one of Abby's people that she could get injured or hurt or killed. I didn't have the Seraphites, because people would lose their shit if she was killed by this other side group of people. So I just wasn't worried about her at all. So as soon as she left that island, I was like, I want those 5 minutes back.
Right.
Throw another scene in there or something that got missed. I don't know. What did you think of that scene being included? Because I don't think it even needed to be there.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, it does not happen in the game at all. And like
so why include it?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say that they're padding the episode because it didn't. If anything, it stops the flow of the episode.
Exactly.
That she's on the island, and whether she was trying to get there or not, she, like you said, she ends up there. And also, by the way, the boat conveniently is also washed up right where she washes up, right? And yeah, she runs into the Seraphites. They string her up. They're going to cut her open. Then the alarm goes off. And then they just, like I said, leave her. And they run away. And now she's left there. And she's like, I'm out of here. And then suddenly she's driving in the boat again, heading back towards the aquarium and the Ferris wheel and stuff. Yeah. So it is a weird scene. And I'm with you. I don't understand the reason why they felt they needed that in there, that we needed to be reintroduced again to the scars or so. I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, if anything, the only thing it does is it establishes that the scars are on the island and it's kind of like their base, right? Because they have a village there. They clearly have a settlement there.
Yeah.
And the scene we get with Isaac earlier in the episode, you can tell that they're planning this massive operation to invade that island, and
Right.
he tells, when Park is like, well, Abby's AWOL and isn't there, and he's like, that's not good because we need Abby, and she's like, why? And he's like, because there's a very good chance that in 12 hours you'll be dead, and even better chance that I'll be dead, and when that happens, who's gonna lead the army? And what does he say? Like, despite their badass name, they're all basically sheep.
Right.
And he's like, Abby was that person. And kind of like Jesse is sort of the anointed one to take over Jackson when the time comes. Isaac
Right.
is thinking Abby is that person that, she's the one that's got the charisma and the intelligence and the smarts and the authority to lead the army, and they'll follow her, and so maybe we're shown that scene, and then we're shown this scene of Ellie on the island to kind of emphasize that the island, like this operation, and like you said, Ellie sees these like massive explosions going off in the background when she's leaving. Maybe what they're just trying to tell us is that this is kind of like a turning point in the war, that this is Isaac's attempt to end the war, to win the war, whatever, and it's a big deal, and maybe I don't know, because I'm right with you. I don't understand why we had that scene, because it does nothing to forward the action or the story at all.
Yeah. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get there, but I think some of it was when we see Abby later, it's in my notes, she's got some rope burns on her neck.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they showed that scene with her being hung to show like a nugget of information to give you an idea of maybe where Abby's been. Maybe she was being held by the Seraphites. I don't know, but that's the only connective tissue I see there. And I like what you said too. Like it establishes that the Scars had like a village, a home base where they kept to themselves, as it were. Like that's their place, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think you could have established that without showing the scene. And I don't know why that mark is on Abby's neck. It could be for something totally different. And if that's the case, then this scene didn't need to be in the episode at all. I don't think.
Okay. Over and alls.
Over. Nothing to say.
No,
okay,
I have nothing that I can add under the current Freedom of Information Act that I am forced to work under in these podcasts. So yes.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to things we can talk about,
yes.
Which is things that happened in the episode.
Yes.
So she does make it to the pier finally. Now she's so like hopped up because she just escaped death that she's, she makes her way all the way through. She follows like the breadcrumbs. It looks like there's like there's a little sort of vignette that looks like somebody had some surgery done. Like there's some like gauze pads, like somebody was injured and they're trying to fix them up.
Yep.
So I'm curious what that means. And so she follows like footsteps through the, because there's like footprints in the ground, and she follows everything all the way through, and she comes upon Mel and Owen. Mm-hmm. And they are actually talking about Abby as she comes upon them. And it sounds like they are planning, and this is what I gleaned from the moment there, is that Abby is behind enemy lines somewhere, and in order to get to her, they would need to go behind enemy lines as well. And Mel thinks that is stupid, and Owen is like, we need to do it because it's Abby.
Very Jesse-like, would you not say?
Correct. He would say, it's Tommy, it's Dina, it's whatever. And so exactly, it's a very Jesse moment there. And so you get that information before Ellie even makes herself seen and known that she's there. So you already know that Abby's not there with them. But Ellie makes herself seen, she's shown, and the reaction is amazing because Mel is scared, like totally scared shitless. Out of all of the people from that scene at the lodge where Joel was killed, Mel, in the moment, and we'll find out when I'll find out when they show everything from Abby's perspective, but at least in the moment at the lodge, Mel seemed the most regretful for what they were doing, the most hesitant, the most, well, you said we were going to do this. Well, why are we going to do that? We said we were going to, she seemed the most, we bit off more than we could chew kind of thing. So she's the most scared. Are you there?
I'm there, yeah.
Oh, okay. There was a weird beep there, and it sounded like it was disconnected.
Oh, no.
That's interesting.
No. I'm here and eagerly awaiting what you're going to say.
Anyway, so, Mel is really scared, and then she's like, oh my God, but then Owen moves his head, and he's like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Like, they just cannot believe that she's there.
Yeah.
And let's put it this way, in that moment, she doesn't need to say like she did to Nora, do you remember me?
Right, yeah, right.
She doesn't get to have her Furiosa moment. Yeah. Remember me?
Yeah, and actually, the next scene when she encounters someone from that group, there's also no need to introduce herself. That she gets recognized a lot.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's you, it's that girl. So that whole scene is pretty it goes exactly the way I thought it would.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think they were going to ask. I didn't think they were going to give any information up. I didn't think that, they were going to be compliant with Ellie. First of all, Bella Ramsey is a smaller person.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, like, Bella is, like, the age that Ellie is now, she's, like, 19 or 20.
Mm-hmm.
No more than, like, 21 or something like that, right?
I think so, yeah.
She's a petite person, right? And Owen is, like, a larger dude. Mel is a little taller than her, I think. They really underscore her smallness. She doesn't look like she's going to win this, like, head-to-head combat moment. She has the upper hand for, like, a half second, but I'm like, just the way they use camera angles down on Bella, and in these scenes, it's almost like they're highlighting her youngness,
Mm-hmm.
And at least to me, that's how I perceive it. And so I didn't think she had a chance in hell. She's got the upper hand for a second because they don't have, but she also doesn't know the space she's in, and they do, which is always a little bit of an advantage there. So I wasn't surprised when he reached for the gun.
Oh yeah.
That felt very like he's gonna do something here.
Well, remember he says, "Hey, I'm the one that saved you."
Right.
To try and like disarm the situation a little bit here, be like, whoa.
I love how they make that like a, hey, that should make me the good guy.
Yeah.
Because Owen says it, I'm the one who saved you. And then when Abby later, when she's like, I let you live. I let you live.
Yeah.
Like, why would, in that moment where her father was like dead on the floor because you stuck a golf club in his head,
Mm-hmm.
like, is she supposed to be like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to go after her. You know why?
He let me live. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched my father die brutally, but you let me live, so we'll let it go this time. So it's just funny how it's like, I'm the one, you're alive because of me. Yeah, but I'm not here because you let me stay alive. I'm here because of the person you brutally killed in front of my face.
Brutally beat and murdered in front of me.
Yeah.
Yes, that guy.
Yes. Yeah, remember that guy,
Mm-hmm.
the other one
Mm-hmm.
that he was in the room there? Yeah. So the Owen death was like, it wasn't tragic to me. And the moment where you're like, oh God, when it clipped her neck.
Oh yeah.
But then when she opened her jacket and she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit. Mm. And then Ellie in that moment, oh my God, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And Mel was so calm.
Well,
she's like,
Mel was bleeding out, okay? So
yeah, she's like, she's trying so hard to focus on two different things at once. Like, I'm dying, and also, oh, by the way, I have 30 seconds.
Yeah. You got to cut this kid out of me now.
Yeah. Oh my God. And just in that moment, and she's got a knife. She takes it out.
It's her switchblade.
But I thought in the moment that the worst part was when she says she knows the surgical name of the cut she's got to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's low transverse. And she just says that. She's so like quiet and calm, and she's like, low transverse.
Mm-hmm.
And she just keeps saying that. And Ellie is just overcome with like, I don't know what that means. I left to right, up and which way do I cut or whatever.
Yeah.
And what's sad is like, if you've ever opened and this is that moment, she's not a book learning person. Mm-hmm. I guarantee that they all have been given childbirthing classes in some way. Like, if you're an emergency and you need this or whatever, low transverse cut is right below the belly at the top of the pubic bone. She's got a cut right there at the lowest point of the belly so they can pull the baby out that way. And so anyway, if she'd been in classes, she might have known what that meant. Saying low transverse just meant low to the belly, transverse, left to right, right to left, doesn't matter. Go across. Anyway, It's also I'm so sorry. I was raised by a nurse, and so I had all
Ah,
those terms learned when I was really young. So I'm coming from a different perspective. My apologies.
well, and,
So
you know,
maybe Ellie wouldn't know
you
that.
did grow up in Boston, so I'm sure you personally delivered several children in your high school years too. So,
Yeah, that's definitely what I did. Anyway, so Ellie's reaction is just devastating because she can't do it because she doesn't want to do it wrong.
hmm
But in that moment, it's like, what are you going to do with the baby?
yeah, the baby's gonna
Let's
die
say she
anyway.
does it. Right. What is she going to do with the
Yeah,
baby?
and if it
You know what I mean?
survives, yeah, then what do you do? Yeah.
Right. Is it like, oh, I hate your guts, all of you,
Mhm.
but I'm going to take your baby with
That's
me?
right, baby. Because now
That's right.
Dina and I have twins. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, they were born a few months apart, but this is technical details.
semantics, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you're right. I mean, the whole thing is a pipe dream from Mel's point of view.
Oh
That I
yeah.
mean, and it's literally like it's the mom realizing that she's been killed because first of all, we should point out Ellie is using Joel's gun. It's not her 9 millimeter. It's Joel's revolver. And
Right.
when Owen goes for his gun that's on the table, she shoots him with this 38 that goes right through him and hits Mel and obviously like cuts the carotid artery in her neck. And the
Right.
bullet goes into the wall behind her. And for a minute,
Right.
like she looks back and she sees the bullet hole, and then she turns, and then you see the blood start, you know, oozing out,
Right.
right? And Mel knows because she's got medical training, she's a medic and everything. She's like, I'm gonna die because you
Right.
can't stop this. Maybe in a hospital you could with doctors and nurses and stuff, but not here. And so her
Right.
first and only thought is get the kid out of me because the kid has a chance to survive, even though it's like no, that's a fantasy, all right, because
Right.
the person that did it, first of all, just shot you, so probably not overexcited to
Yep.
like help you, but even if she is, and Ellie is, because Ellie is in the full blown oops, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you mode. um Even if she does, again, you're gonna like instruct someone who has zero medical training while you're literally bleeding out and losing consciousness. And like you said, she's got like 30 seconds to talk her through this. No, there's just never gonna happen. But again, she has no choice, right? It's the mama instinct, right? It's the
Right.
protect my kid thing. But like, and then you just raised a really good point too of like, let's assume Ellie does know what low transverse mean, and she does cut. And as she says, she asks her like how deep, and Mel goes deeper than you think, right? So Mel
Right.
is like a little bit still around and able to respond. But even if she does that, and she cuts open and she gets the baby out and she cuts the umbilical cord, and now she has this screaming, I would assume like premature baby in her arms. What does she do then? You can't like run to the
I
Walgreens
know.
and get some baby feed, some formula, right? I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just
Right.
there's no way. Yeah, it was a real intense scene. There's no doubt. Um, I like the callback that Ellie does to season one, where she uses the thing that Joel did, which is you have two
Right.
people and you're trying to interrogate them, and you have one of them either write down their answer or point, and then you have the other one point or say their answer, and if the answers aren't lining up, you know that they're lying to you, and then you hurt them until they tell you the truth. I thought that was really cool because he
Yeah.
definitely did that in season one, and we all remember
Oh
that
yeah.
moment, right? We just a little glimpse
Hmm.
of how brutal he can be. So I like that. And again, like I said, it was Joel's gun that she used at this point, because I think the reason she had it out is she really thought Abby was in there, and
Oh
that
yeah.
gun is being saved for Abby type thing. They even made a point of when she first gets in there out of the rain, she takes the bullets out of the revolver and she like dries
Right.
them off in a towel to make sure that everything's great, that there's no chance this gun's gonna malfunction. Um,
Right.
but I have to say that this sequence happens in the game, but there are some subtle differences here in that in the game does not hide the fact that Mel is pregnant at all. And
Okay.
in fact, like for most of the times that we see Mel in the game outside of like back in Seattle, not the Jackson stuff, because the Jackson they're all wearing winter clothes and big heavy coats, and it's hard to tell. But in the Seattle stuff, Mel basically walks around in like a t-shirt that is like two sizes too small for her, and so her baby bump is super obvious to everybody from
Okay.
any angle. Yeah, so there's none of this,
Okay.
oh crap, she's pregnant moment. And the other thing is in the game, Ellie don't care.
Yeah.
And there's none of this, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, oh my God. And and I think too, um she's pointing the gun at him and she's like, you're going to tell me. And Owen says something like, she's going to kill us no matter what we say. And Ellie goes, no, I
Right.
won't. I don't want to hurt you. You tell me where Abby is and I'll let you live.
She
Right.
says, I'm not like
I'm
you,
not, yeah, I'm not like,
too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. And again, in the game, that ain't it. I mean, you kind of find them, you come upon them, you get a little cutscene of them, and they're having this conversation like in here, and they're talking about Abby, and they're also talking about, leaving. Like he says in the episode, he says something like, we're gonna go get Abby and then come back, and if you want to go, you can come with us or something like that. And
Okay.
Mel's like, no, and then Mel turns to leave, and that's when she sees Ellie. And that that's
Oh,
how the reveal happens, and you get all that, and then they're kind of staring you down, and I think you do the a little bit of the tell me where Abby is, and then Owen just draws his gun, and then you're on, and you kill both of them, and the game, Ellie doesn't even bat an eye at the fact that Mel's preggers. That's my
wow.
remembrance of it. It is very cold and very brutal, and like I said, they that's I think kind of what they wanted to do when they're telling the story is that we want to say Ellie's the good guy and Abby's the bad guy, but you look at the stuff that Ellie starts doing as she gets closer to Abby, and the line gets really blurry.
Right.
You know, and,
Right. It's we got a real Negan satellite station situation happening here.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and this is where a lot, I think, of the game guys and gals are complaining on the interwebs right now. In that, like you said, what Ellie sees that Mel's pregnant, and she's like, "Oh no!" And she's
Right.
crying, right, and tears, and she's trying. What can I do? How can I help? And it's like they're going out of their way to make sure that, and remember, Ellie's the good guy here. Ellie is not a bad person at all. She's there's
Right.
don't and a lot, I think the game players are like, yeah, that's not how it should be. It should be both of these people. Are they in the wrong? That's up to you to decide, but you can totally see why they're doing what they're doing, and why they're so cold and brutal in their revenge. And
Right.
but anyway, you're right though. I mean, it's a gut-wrenching scene to watch Mel
Yeah.
just kind of fade away, and Ellie. I gotta ask you, if Mel was even able to answer her questions and tell her what she needed to do you think she would have been able to do it?
Yes, I think she would have. I think she just didn't want to do it without direction.
Yeah.
She was so caught up in the moment and so feeling so remorseful about, and again, not about the person or the baby. She was feeling remorseful for herself. She's like, "Oh my god, I'm just killed a pregnant person."
Mm-hmm.
But I so I think she would have, tried to do whatever to help out. I don't know. It's I think she would have, but it's moot because there's so little time there.
Yeah.
And she had already lost, some of her clarity and consciousness, so early on,
Oh yeah,
it moved pretty quickly.
Yeah, she was fading out, right? And I'm pretty sure, if you get that artery in your neck cut like that, dude, that's a main line, so you're gonna lose a lot of blood pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
yeah, I think she would have at least tried.
Okay.
How crazy would that have been, though? Let's say Mel was clear on what to do, and Abby started cutting.
Mm-hmm.
And now, mind you, if she had started cutting, Mel is going to die before she finishes what she's doing. It takes a minute or two to get there.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if it's not Tommy and Jesse that walks in, but some other random wolf or person sees Abby with a knife and she's cutting Mel open?
She's cutting out
what
this dead woman's
there?
Dead child. It's very Manson-ish, right? It's very Sharon Tate-ish.
It's not cool.
No, not at all. I see, because it's interesting because you think she would have. I think she wouldn't. I think at that moment Ellie is paralyzed by fear of, and not
okay,
and it's fear of like, I don't want to like kill the baby accidentally, because I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It's a real interesting hypothetical. Would she have been able to do it or not? But no, she doesn't. And again, she's just a wreck, and she's blubbering and crying. And it's at that moment that Tommy and Jesse find her.
Yeah.
And come upon her.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that they saved her, because she wasn't really in any danger anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have to get out of there pretty quick.
Yes.
Because obviously the war on the island, which is close by, is escalating, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, they still have people that are like, they're trying to find Abby. So, I mean, there could be like one patrol that was sent. Who knows? But the point is that they've killed two of their people. They got to get out of there. And so they go.
And Tommy like tries, he does his best to try and help her out and reassure her, and he basically says, hey, they made their choices and they got what they deserved, which it's funny because when at this moment when they come upon her and literally she's still just like sitting next to Mel,
right,
the dead woman, and you have to assume the baby's dead at this point too, and Owen's dead and all this, and Ellie is just like literally the tears are just rolling down her cheeks. She's so upset and emotionally distraught. The one thing that I jumped into my mind, especially the second time I watched the episode, is like she was definitely channeling the Schofield kid from Unforgiven, from the Eastwood movie, which you remember when that's a revenge story too, right? Where they go to kill these guys that cut up this working girl in this town where Gene Hackman is the sheriff, right? And the Schofield kid is this young guy that's going with Morgan Freeman and Clint Eastwood, and they're like these seasoned, like, bad people who, killed people and all this stuff. And the young guy's never killed anybody, and he shoots one of the guys. I don't know, you've seen Unforgiven, right?
Not in years. Like, I don't even remember half of it.
Well,
to be fair, it's been a long time.
He shoots one of the guys that was there, but the guy that he shoots is kind of like Mel in that he didn't cut the working girl, and he was just like the guy's friend who was at the whorehouse that night, type thing. You know what I mean? So, is he responsible? It's kind of a gray area, right? I mean, he was there, but he didn't participate. It wasn't him, you know what I mean? And yet this kid shoots him 3 times, and once he shoots him, he's like, I'm done. I'm leaving. Even though there are other guys still to kill to get the money that's been promised, he's like, I don't want the money. You can have my money. I just want to leave. And it it totally rocked his whole world. And he talked big before this in the movie, and
Of
he's like,
course.
yeah, I'm the
Yeah.
Schofield kid, man, and I'm gonna shoot these guys, I'm gonna get my money and all. And now he's like, I'm leaving, and he looks right at Clint Eastwood, and he's like, I'm not like you, Bill. I'm not
Yeah.
that person. And he does, and he leaves, and he goes his own separate way. And I just had a real strong vibe of that Ellie is basically, when those two people are dead, it's like Ellie, she's full. Right, she's full up on
Yeah.
killing, and it's, even though Abby's not dead, and really Abby's the one she should have killed, and all these others, you probably could have, like, made them, like, stand in the corner for 20 minutes and they would have learned their lesson. But even though Abby's not dead, Ellie's done. Right.
Right.
And Ellie's like, yeah, you know
Yeah.
what? I just, and like you've said, and I think it's real insightful that you said this a couple of times, and I agree, it's absolutely true. Ellie is feeling remorseful, not for the people she killed, but for the fact that she's doing all these horrible things.
Yes.
And that,
Yes.
I think that's a really great comment, because yes, it is. Because as we've said, with Ellie, it's all about Ellie.
Right.
And so yeah,
Yep.
and at this point, now she's like kind of taking stock of, okay, I beat and tortured this other girl, Nora, with this pipe,
Mm-hmm.
and now I've shot and killed a guy that you want to make the argument of self-defense. He was going for a gun, whatever. I don't care. He's an unarmed guy you shot in cold blood, and you killed another person who was a pregnant woman. So now you've killed a third unborn kid who has absolutely nothing to do with this, right?
Right.
And I think that's, she's kind of like, I don't want to be this person.
I think it also, while you were saying that, it dawned on me too. It's indirect, like it's placed this right along the same path as Joel. She can't judge Joel for doing what he did at the hospital
Mm-hmm.
to if she is feeling like no remorse towards the people that she's doing the same thing to, because it's the same idea. She's doing this to avenge the one person because she loves Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And she's calling into question, it's not just her that she's also mourning, you know what I mean, like you were just saying, like she's realizing, like, I'm doing these terrible things, and she's thinking more about herself. But I think she's also, there's an element of her too that's got to be thinking, this is what Joel felt like in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had no choice but to do those terrible, terrible things, because in his mind there was no choice.
There was no choice.
And
Yeah.
and that's her parent. She learned everything from him.
Yeah.
So Jesse can say anything he wants to say to her, but it doesn't change the fact that her foundational parent, that helped teach her the way of the world, did those things, and she learned from him and is also doing the same
thing. Yeah.
things.
While
Yeah.
at the same time, like he said in the flashback, right, when he passes on the message of his dad saying, hey, you know what, when it's your turn, and he's talking about raising kids, but you can apply it to just living in this crazy world. Try and do
Sure.
it a little bit better than me.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And she's one might say she's failing at that.
Oh,
right now,
she is,
you know?
and I think it's scaring her a lot, because not only is she failing, but it's really easy to be this
Yes.
horrible person.
Right. It's like she said about Nora, it's easier than she thought it would be.
Yeah.
So that's shocking to her. It's not what she was expecting
No.
to be. That's not the emotion she was expecting to be in.
No.
So Tommy and Jesse do, they grab her from they all sort of reunite,
Mm-hmm.
and they head back to the rendezvous point of the
theater.
movie theater.
Yeah, where
And,
Dina is still waiting, watching her.
Yes, she is. And there's a great little moment there. Dina's so excited that Tommy is fine. And of course, in Dina's head, it's like, great, now we can go home. They do have a moment where Tommy and Jesse are doing some little bit of planning where they're like, okay, moving her in this kind of weather, it's going to be hard enough to move quick with Dina anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to wait just a little bit to see if the weather eases up a little, because it'd be hard enough, and to have to do that while it's raining out, and, you know, could she get sick from the rain, and she's already, you know, lost blood and is injured, do we want to risk that? You know, so there's a lot going on, you know, and for themselves, you know, to be able to, you know, guns don't, like Ellie wiped off her gun there, you know, guns don't work well if they get like soaked in water, and they need to be able to defend themselves as they leave. All of these factors in their head, they're trying to make those plans, and Tommy and Jesse are hanging out on the inside of the theater, like right by the stage.
Yep.
They do show like a really quick clip that shows that Dina's sleeping at the time.
Yeah.
So she's in the dressing room sleeping, and Ellie comes in, and you can sense that, you know, they talk for a second, and Tommy can sense that Jesse and Ellie need to have.
They do it. It's so great because he like looks at Jesse, and he looks at Ellie, and he looks back at Jesse, and he's like, "I'm gonna go pack the duffels."
Yeah,
and he's like, "I'm leaving.
I don't need to be here for this.
I'm gonna go outside just for no reason." Yeah, it was very fun, and so yeah, you had this great scene between Jesse and Ellie, and you know, I kind of read this scene, and I'm curious for your thoughts and your thought idea,
Sure.
but it's sort of like they clearly don't agree with each other's like viewpoints, but they like have come to some kind of like resolution that, like, you know what, you're always going to be you and I'm always going to be me, and we can still be friends despite those things. You know what I mean? It's a very
Right.
positive kind of a conversation, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and regardless of like whether they, you know, they have the same agreeable, like they both would probably, if they had to redo the whole thing over again, Jesse would still go get Tommy. Ellie would still do what she's going to do. They're never going to change. But like I was saying earlier, they do have the moment where they both are feeling the same thing. And Jesse takes that second where, you know, he's basically like, you know, you're terrible, you're frustrating, you always do everything like, you could tell he's got all these emotions about how Ellie is just a pain in the ass, and this is like, we're all in danger, and it's because of you and you're foolhardy and all this other stuff, things he said in all these other scenes. He's got all that emotion in him, but he says to her that he realized that if it were him that was out there, if Jesse was out there, because she thanks them for coming to get her.
Yes.
And that's what sort of starts the conversation. And he says, if it were me that were, you know, if I were in trouble, if I were lost, you would set the world on fire to try and find me. And I and it's such a great line, and he's, you know, it's almost like he had to come to grips with, like, we can agree to disagree about our approaches, but it doesn't change the fact that we genuinely care very, very much for each other, which is why because he admits, he's like, I didn't have to be forced by Tommy, because that's the thing. She's like, thanks for coming to get me. He's like,
maybe it wasn't my idea.
Maybe it wasn't my idea. And she's like, was it? And he's like, no, it was. You know, basically he reluctantly is like, I still care about you. Yeah. You know, even though you drive me bananas.
Even though you're a pain in the ass.
Yeah. And she feels the same way. And that's what made him realize, you are my friend, and we disagree on so many different things, but we care so much about each other. It's foundational that how we feel about each other is the foundation. The rest of it, we can work on it, whatever. We are who we are, and we're not going to change. But the part of our personality that's the same is the loyalty to the friend. And he brought that up, and she immediately agreed when he's like, you would, you know, burn the world down to try and find me, burn the earth to try and find me. And she's like, yeah, I would.
She goes, I
and,
would, yeah.
Yeah, so they just had this really great moment.
Which is really convenient, because it's like their last moment.
It's convenient. It's fortuitous, and then they're sort of sitting there in that moment and enjoying it, and there's like kerfuffle and commotion, and there's a couple of shots go off.
Yeah, they hear a gunshot, right? And so they sprint up the main aisle of the theater, and they've got their guns out, and Jesse is in front and she's a little behind, and he opens the door out into the lobby, and bang, headshot, dead.
Yeah. I'm curious how you feel about that, because I after watching it a couple of times, I feel like Jesse sort of barreling out into the lobby of the theater, like going through that door, was like without doing the the cops do, the peek around and make sure you're okay. They already knew there was gunfire, and they opened a door. They had no way of visualizing the other side of the door. It was so out of character for Jesse to just go bursting through that door without checking it first. That's how I felt. It felt very, I don't know. And maybe it was because there was the idea that maybe Dina was being threatened, or Tommy. And again, just like he said to Ellie, these are people that are his community, he cares about, he loves them. And maybe he just wasn't thinking straight, but he's also so responsible about that stuff. I don't know. I felt that was another one of those moments where I was like, is that really something Jesse would do? Would Jesse really barrel through that door without checking it first? What do you think? How did you take that moment?
I think in that moment, I don't think he's thinking that there's like an intruder that's in there. I think he's like, something happened, and Tommy could be hurt. Like he's, it was like an accident, like he was holstering his gun and it accidentally went off or whatever, something like that, something crazy like that. So he's not thinking, oh crap, there's, a bunch of wolves in the lobby that have somehow gotten in, because, they've got the door kind of barricaded, right? They put the couches and stuff in front of it. And
right.
So, you would think that if someone were to try to get in, there would be more warning than that. And so, yeah, I just kind of think that they're like, well, something happened. Let's go see what it is. And I can tell you that is, again, straight out of the game. That whole end sequence is straight out of the game. You come running, Jesse gets shot. Although the game, it's a little less clear that he's dead. You find out later, oh yeah, he didn't make it. But I mean, in the show, he's lying on the ground, his eyes are wide open, and there's a big pool of blood coming out of his head. So it's like, yes, Abby, and it's Abby, of course, who's there, and she, headshotted him. I mean, she literally followed our advice, right. And aimed for the head there. And
damn it,
I know, the one time, right? The one time somebody actually listens to us. Right. And so he goes down, and Tommy, Abby is like standing over Tommy, and I know you wrote this down because I guess it's the second time where she sees Ellie, and she's like, oh my God, it's you! What the hell?
Yeah.
This sort of like, I can't believe that you came all the way here to do this. And Ellie is like, let him go, don't hurt him. You want me? I'm the one you want. And Abby's like, you guys killed all my friends. And Ellie's like, no, it was just me. I did that. Yeah. And that's when, she throws that line out that you wrote down where Abby ain't having any of it either.
Yeah, she can't believe. She's like, I let you live. She had like, it was like a quiet realization, and then she got really forking pissed. Mm-hmm. She's like, I let you live. I let you live, and you wasted it.
Yeah. And then, she points the gun, and Ellie's like, wait, no. And then you hear like, bang, bang, bang. And then it smashes to black. And I'm sure I if I would have stuck my ear out of my window when you were watching it, I would have heard coming from your area,
no.
because let's say I could just be you like going, you can't cut now.
Yeah. This is gonna sound crazy, but it honestly it made me think of in the musical Hamilton. I'm really sorry.
Oh,
In the
wow.
musical Hamilton, when they have the final scene of which is have you ever seen the musical or even watched it on the Disney Plus one?
I watched it on Disney. I didn't
Okay.
actually go and see it, but yeah.
Okay. I've done both. But I've listened to the soundtrack a million times, but in the final, the final moment of the musical is the duel between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. And just as as they turn, he sees that the story is that Alexander Hamilton didn't want to do it. He points his pistol towards the sky, and Burr comes around so fast that he doesn't see that, and he's already shot. And so in the song, he points his pistol towards the sky, wait! And then there's silence. So in that moment, I was like, you don't know what happened in the moment because everything moves so fast. Oh my God, wait. And then the shot. So, son of a bitch, they go to black and we don't know what happened. So I have my notes after the notes sort of section where I'm talking about stuff, but you can't answer this question because but my question to the world, to the community is who was shot and was anyone shot? Because it could be a tease. Tommy was on the floor, but Abby is very distracted by the fact that Ellie is there. So she could easily have, and Tommy's good, Tommy could have gotten up and maybe he tackles her and she gets a shot off. Maybe Dina, who was in the dressing room when this all went down, maybe Dina creeps in and sees what's going to happen and she shoots Abby. Maybe Tommy's the one who's shot. Maybe Dina's the one who's shot. I don't know. But it sucks because I have to ask. In the video game, you find out who is shot via the video game, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you just reinforced I can't read anything that mentions the video game over the next 2 years because I don't want it spoiled.
Yeah,
because
pretty much,
that's such a great cliffhanger. And it's really rare for us to get a good one these days, because everything's so online. So, all right, good. All right. Note to self, ignore the internet for 2 years.
I think you can totally do it.
I can try. I can certainly try. Oh, my God. All right, so they go to black, and then the next thing we get is, oh, my God, it's Abby waking up.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that brief moment until they gave us the little, informational about where we were and the time and the place. I was like, did Abby dream part of this? It happened really quick. I was like, was Abby having a bad dream? And that scene didn't really happen where she shot Jesse. Little bit in my heart. I was like, maybe that didn't really happen. But then obviously it's 3 days previous. But yeah. So Seattle, day one. What did you think?
Again, straight out of the game.
Really?
Absolutely straight out of the game. And by the way, the guy that comes and wakes her up is Manny. Yes, which in the show is the only other person besides Abby that we did not see get revenged on in the show. So yeah, and so and again, it's exactly the thing. You're in Lumen Field, which is the big stadium in Seattle where the Seattle Seahawks play, and I think their soccer team plays there. It's like a multi-purpose thing, but it's this massive, 60, 70,000 seating arena, and just like you see in the show, Abby gets up and you kind of slowly make your way and you go out, and it's like it's clear that she's like sleeping in like a skybox or something at the stadium,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
she goes out onto the balcony, and you get this shot, and like the whole playing field is being used, and you really, if it hasn't been kind of, if you haven't figured it out by now, this is like the thing where you're like, holy crap, the Wolves are freaking huge.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is an army. This is a massive force. It's not like six guys living in a cabin,
Yeah.
So yeah,
I was curious about something though
mhm,
when they revealed that their home base, that their home, as it were, is the football field.
mhm.
I'm curious about one thing, and I wonder if you had this thought since because the series, the game was released like years ago, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like maybe
So,
3 or 4 years old, yeah.
oh, that's it. Okay.
I think. I mean, let me look it up.
Here's my question, because I had the same thought when Fear used the stadium for their home base. I was like, it makes the most sense. It's all, first of all, the skyboxes and the press boxes are up, far up off of the ground, so
Mhm.
away from the dead,
Right.
and you are literally surrounding a field which you can then grow crops in, which is what they did on Fear. And so when you see how much is going on down at that football field, that they've got all these major crops going on, and there's like little greenhouse areas where they're doing like other crops, etc.
Mhm.
So like, did you? So if this wasn't a thing, if this wasn't out, when I was, my question was going to be, did you watch that scene in Fear and think of this? Because it's in the video game, but it's possible that they may have not happened at the same time.
Yeah, no, not really, just because this was so massive, and I don't think this is giving away too many cats from the bag, in that the stadium is not their home base.
Oh,
That
okay.
they are just so massive.
This is just one of their
One of
bases.
the places they
Oh,
are,
okay.
yeah. And I just looked it up. The Last of Us game was released in 2020, so it would be 5 years old at some point this year.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and I think the stadium, on Fear, when did that happen? Was that 2020? Was that
Oh
2021?
God,
Maybe. I mean,
that was no, that was before
was
that,
it
because
was
it
it?
was, I think so, because it was before Madison left. It was the season that Madison
Yeah,
dies.
it's that
I'm sorry, air quotes, dies.
yeah, it's the season when Kim Dickens said, "I had enough of this crap."
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
You need to
Um.
pay me more money. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye. Yeah. But no, I didn't, and I think it's, if I had not played the game and kind of had a better understanding of how much of Seattle the Wolves are in control of, I probably would have, absolutely, because it is very, obviously it's a direct call right there.
Yeah,
It's like, stadium, like you said. Stadiums are great. They have,
they
exits that
are.
are easy to guard and to barricade and close off. You've
Yeah.
got facilities, you've got plumbing, there's lots of bathrooms, there's lots of running water, you've got the skyboxes, you've got like all of the concession places so you can cook food. I mean,
Hmm.
there's a lot of advantages to
Yeah. I
to
mean,
doing it.
they took the idea as well for Dead City for season one, because when they're in Madison Square Garden,
Yeah.
they're doing the same thing. They're using the skyboxes as
Yeah, yeah.
places to, so the Croat has like, he's using some of those areas. So it just reinforced it for me, because I think like when the apocalypse happens, where I live, we're actually
Hmm.
only about a mile and a half from the high school soccer slash, it's not a really, it's a high school field, so really there's only like stands,
Yeah. Yeah.
but still, you could you could do a lot of work over there.
Oh,
I don't know.
absolutely. Well, and just from a video game thing, there's another video game called Fallout, that there's an actual series that is out, and it's a post-apocalyptic thing, but it's like hundreds of years after like a nuclear war. And
Okay.
in one of them, in Fallout 4, it's set in, you'd love it. It's set in Boston, and
Hmm.
there's a huge settlement in Fenway Park.
Oh, okay.
And
That makes sense.
and like they've got the green monster to protect them from there's all kind in that universe there's all kinds of like mutated animals and things have become horrible big icky monsters that are kind of roaming the land, and there's lots of raiders and stuff, so you need to have big walls and guns to protect yourself. But anyway,
Yeah.
there literally is a settlement that lives in Fenway Park, and one of the little missions you can do in the game is you need to find green paint to repaint the green monster because the paint's wearing out, and so you have to go and find it. And it's every time I play it, I always think, I'm like, Diana would really get a kick out of this. So.
Yeah, I probably would. All right, so that's the end of the episode, the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
You had some thoughts about how it ended, if you want to sort of share how it sort of lined up with how you felt it was going to end.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, once I found out that there were only 7 episodes and there was already another season announced, I kind of thought this is what they would do, and that they, this season is Ellie's 3 days in Seattle. Right. Which we got day 1, day 2, day 3. And now the next season, I would guess the majority of it is going to be Abby's same 3 days, but with what Abby experienced and went through.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you are the observant, paying attention to the details kind of a person, because they've given us some things to think about.
Right.
Does Abby have rope burns on her neck? Sure look
Right.
like it, right? Sure
it
look like
does. It does, but I mean, it could be something else, but to me, that's what I thought of.
That's what she said, right? And then also, when Ellie gets into the aquarium, she kind of comes on this like weird like hospital triage area, and there's all these bloody gauze and surgical tools, and so what is that? We don't know. We get the little snippet of conversation between Mel and Owen that Abby is somehow behind enemy lines, and I'm using air quotes, So yeah, we've had some little clues, some little breadcrumbs that, what, Abby's 3 days haven't been her sitting in the skybox reading the book.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's another side to the story, and there's like people online that are talking about how they don't, that there's fallout because it's clear they're going to tell some of the story from Abby's perspective, and I'm like, so what?
Yeah.
Like I think that's interesting. I mean, we've talked about this at length when we talk about post-apocalyptic, when people have to make these terrible choices to survive. Sometimes you're Rick and sometimes you're Negan, and you can't judge the one for the other, because if you were in a similar situation, who's to say who you would be? And I think that, exploring Abby's side of it is going to reinforce those things. And, one thing that's great about television these days is the onset in the last 10 or so years of all these great shows that have anti-heroes, where someone is the lead and they're billed as the hero of the episode, like a Walter White, but they do terrible things.
Yeah.
And you are in effect rooting for someone like Tony Soprano. You're rooting for them, and they have good aspects to their personality here and there, but they are a bad person who does bad things.
Yeah.
And so you have to grapple with, well, are they the hero of the story or are they not? So I guess next season is when we'll grapple with, is Abby the hero of the story, or is Ellie the hero of the story?
Right. Well,
or is there no hero, because in the post-apocalyptic world, there are no heroes, just people trying to survive and get by.
They're just survivors. Yeah. And I think the other thing is that we're going to see next season is that Abby is just as flawed as Ellie, in that,
right.
we're going to see her and she's going to do some really great things and generous things, and she cares about her friends, and she's not this black painted villain, and
Right.
like you said, she's a person that is being forced at times to do horrific things because this is the crappy world that they're in.
Right.
And and again, I always thought that was really brave of the video game and the story they told, in that, it starts out and you definitely think it's so obviously a revenge story where Ellie is completely in the right. And, Joel, yeah, he killed all those people, but there was a reason, and that should, excuse him from, he shouldn't have suffered that fate. And yet when you play the Abby part of the game, and you see her and what she's going through and the choices she has to make, you come away from it going, yeah, she's not necessarily any worse or better than Ellie in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
it's gonna be yeah, it's gonna. Whoa.
Oh, sorry.
Hello. That was something. Yeah, it's gonna be real interesting to see. And I also just want to take a quick second to point out that when that sequence starts in the stadium and she's asleep, and Manny wakes her up, she's reading a book.
Mm-hmm.
And
I meant to jot it down and I forget the title, but it's very like on the nose.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because so far, every time on the show that they've mentioned a book, it's or a movie or a story or whatever, a lot of times they're real, particularly the books. They're actual real stories that are out there in the universe. Well, the book she's reading, and again, this is a direct lift from the video game. It's called Thieves of the City.
Okay,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and if you were to Google Thieves of the City, nothing will come up. But what does come up is a book called City of Thieves, and that
Okay.
is a real book, and it's written by this guy, and I'm wondering if you're going to recognize this name. It's a book that was written in 2008, and it's written by this guy named David Benoff.
Do that again. You cut out a
Oh,
little.
it's published in 2008, and it's written by a guy, and his name is David Benoff.
Benoff, or is it Benioff?
Benioff, yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the creators of Game of Thrones.
Yes, he is, absolutely. And Neil Druckmann has said, even going back to the first game, that book was a huge inspiration to Last of Us.
Really?
Yeah, and
Interesting.
I've not read the book. I just kind of read the Wikipedia blurb on it, so I kind of know the basic story. And it's set in the city of Leningrad during World War II. And Leningrad was this massive, like Chicago-sized city that the Germans surrounded and isolated, and cut off all contact with the outside world. And so there was starvation, and it was a horrible place, and it was under siege and cut off for like 3.5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the story is about these two people that are in the city, and they're like the KGB or the NKVD, some Russian intelligence group, gives them this mission. They have to go around the city and like collect all these, I think they're like Fabergé eggs or something, that
Okay.
they need to get. And the two people that are on it, when the mission starts, they can't stand each other, and they're kind of forced to do this. And yet, as the story goes along and they start gathering these eggs and going through all the little trials and tribulations to do that, they become close, and they end up being very, very close. And it's literally like the Joel Ellie relationship from
Mm-hmm.
season one, that
Right.
when it starts, they don't really like each other, and they're forced to do this, and yet by the end, they're dad and daughter type thing. And again, Druckmann has said, oh my God, I love this story, and he put it into the game as a little Easter egg, a little nod to it. But and this is the kind of the thing that people are speculating, like, HBO couldn't figure out how to get the rights to the actual title, when like the guy that wrote it like worked with HBO on arguably like the most commercially successful thing HBO's ever done.
Right.
you know, and they couldn't get it. And again, I don't know what the real story is, but yeah, so it's the book that she's reading is called Thieves of the City, but it's actually the real book it's based on is called City of Thieves. And so kind of a real book, but not exactly.
Uh-huh. Interesting. I
Yeah.
have to look it up and see if I can get a copy.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, and
Try reading it.
it's 2008, so I'm sure it's still available. You know, whether you can get whether it's still in print or you could get, I'm sure you can get a used copy of it on eBay or something.
I'm sure.
But yeah, but once I read that it was Benioff, and he was like the second like number 2 creator on the Game of Thrones TV show. I think he's like right under um what's his name? The guy who wrote him, George R.R. Martin, right?
George R.R. Martin.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the pecking
D.B.
order.
Weiss and David Benioff.
Yeah. So he is extremely high up in that food chain.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if you'd be like, I know who that is.
Yeah. As soon as you said the name, I was like, yes,
I think I know.
I know. All right, so we made it through our points. I made it through some of my notes. Is there anything else that we want to discuss before we take our break?
Just one little thing, and this has to do with Shimmer.
Okay.
Which I can't remember if this was on the podcast or maybe before we started our recording, but we were talking about the fate of Shimmer. And
yes.
and I had said, we never really saw what happened to her, and I thought that they had ridden Shimmer to the TV station, and then when they had to go into the subway and everything, they ended up losing her. And you thought, no, actually, you know what? I think they didn't take her, and they went on foot. And we kind of get a little answer to that, a little resolution that obviously they were listening to us and figured, we need to answer them. And and Jesse points out that when they were looking for them, they found where they stashed Shimmer, and he says she's doing well, by the way, not that you asked. Again pointing out the selfishness of Ellie, but so Shimmer in the show is okay, and you have to assume if any of them survive the sequence in the theater with Abby, that they will take Shimmer when they leave,
right,
and go back. But
here's hoping.
Yes, here's hoping. But I would just point out the reason why I was asking about Shimmer in the first place is that in the game, Shimmer has a very grisly end. It's not a happy ending for Shimmer. She doesn't get to go out to stud or anything, or have lots of babies if Shimmer's a girl. In the game, when you first get to Seattle, and I think I've said this, like it's all abandoned and there's like Fedra gates you have to get through, and you're like in downtown Seattle, and it's all overgrown with grass, and this is where the record store is. So the Aha song happens, and this is where the tank is. And so all of these things kind of happen, and you're exploring, but you're complete. There's like a few infected here or there, but there are no wolves, there are no scars, there are no Fedra, there's no people at all. It's mostly just you're kind of exploring this abandoned city, and eventually you find some notes and letters from various people. Some are from Isaac and their orders, and some are Fedra guy notes, and you find out that the wolves are in this hotel, and in order to get to it, you have to open this gate, and so the big mission of how do you get the gate open. And when you finally do that and you get in the hotel, you see that Tommy's been there and he's killed a bunch of the wolves, and so you're getting closer. And so then when you leave the hotel, you're kind of walking on Shimmer, and in the game there's a lot of horseback riding, and it's real fun because periodically there will be either fallen trees, or in this case, like barricades that are the exact perfect height that you can kind of steeplechase jump over them with your horse.
Okay.
And so you do that, and it's one of these things where you just hit the button and the horse jumps, and you always make it. It's not like you have to do any special timing or anything. It's just you hit the button and the horse jumps. And when you jump over a couple of them, and when you jump over the last one, like Shimmer hits a trip wire or a mine, and there's this explosion, and Dina is blown off the horse and falls off this like bridge you're on and is gone. And as Ellie, you're like stunned. And
Right.
it does the whole thing where, the sound goes away and you hear the ringing, and as Ellie, you're like crawling on the ground, and all these wolf guys are suddenly all over the place, and they're like, go after Dina, find out where she went. And then these other guys are coming at you, and literally a wolf guy just walks up, and Shimmer, by the way, is like screaming in pain on the ground behind you, and clearly like mortally wounded from the explosion. And this wolf guy just walks right up and just shoots Shimmer right in the head, and puts it out of its misery, basically. But in any case, yeah, Shimmer in the video game, it don't end well. so and I was curious. I didn't think they were going to recreate that scene because it's a very video gamey thing to do. And it doesn't really do anything for the story. But I was wondering if they were going to at least, have Shimmer meet her end or his end in Seattle, like she does, or it does in the game. So anyway, I just thought that was I just wanted to relate. There's a difference right there in the game and the show. So.
Well, we haven't seen Seattle Day 4 just yet, so there's still, and I'm glad Shimmer's doing well now, but who knows what'll happen on Day 4.
But
Anything can happen.
That's right.
You never know.
That's right.
All right, well, I think we can stick a fork in it. We've pretty much covered everything at this point. So thanks for sticking around while we had, how it is on a finale, people. We have lengthy debate. We have lots to talk about. So now that we've sort of talked it through, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we'll discuss our listener feedback and what's coming up next on the podcast.
So everyone, please, unlike Shimmer, stick around. We'll be right back.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally gonna get in. You better get ready for it.
No! Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head.
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. Join hosts Diana and Steve as they recap and discuss the best of horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and apocalyptic entertainment. Aim for the Head, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Find us on Instagram and Blue Sky.
Hi, I'm Ross Marquand, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And remember, always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
Hey there, everybody. We are back. We're going to jump into the listener feedback we received for Last of Us right now. So first off, we did get some feedback for last week's episode from our pal Andy from Germany. Hey, Andy. Thanks so much for sending some feedback in. And again, now a reminder, this is for last week's episode. So Andy wrote in and says, Hi, Diana and Steve. Tess didn't change in 2 minutes when she was bit. She didn't change at all. She blows herself up with the infected. But she didn't change. You see it in her expression when the infected guy kisses her. Maybe you mixed something up here, Steven. Using your full Christian name. The Fedra are pros. I don't think they would make such a poster if they were not sure. And then he linked to, you can get like a mock-up of the, you can order online. It's the actual poster you see in the background at different Fedra sites where it's like neck, face, and head. It's 5 to 10 minutes. Torso, arm, shoulder, and hand is 2 to 8 hours. Leg and the foot, 12 to 24 hours for a bite. To full infection, or the wound, there's a wound there. And so I guess apparently if it was, because that's where, what's his face? Eugene was was
Yuji was bit like in the
in
chest
belly.
or
Yeah,
something.
somewhere.
Yeah.
So torso area, as it were. So under the Fedra guidelines, 2 to 8 hours. So anyway, moving on, he says, so technically the situation with Eugene was easy to solve. You tie the guy to a tree and you ride back to return to him with Gail as fast as possible. So go pick up Gail and bring her to him so that they can talk. But they want to depict Joel as a notorious liar in front of Ellie, so he shoots him in the head instead. It's impressive, though, how deep you analyze this scene compared to the other 2 podcasts about the series I listened to. That's what we do, Andy. We're deep analyzers.
We are.
Some might call it we chit-chat a lot, but really... And here, I will fully say we talked that scene through really big, but I feel like it was a pretty pivotal scene. Everything about Ellie finding out about the Fireflies, it hinges on all of that happening. At least the way it's portrayed here in the show, you know. So, and I loved that scene, and I just want to state that I made a comment about it on Joey Pants, which is Joey Pants Leono's Instagram account, and he liked my comment, so ha.
Ha. So there.
Joey Pants.
Andrew.
I didn't go on and on. Basically, he just like shared something. Someone somewhere said that he's already in like really early industry estimates for Emmy nominations for guest actors for a series. And they had someone else up there from Last of Us as well, and also Joey Pants. And he shared it on Instagram, and because it was in like Variety or something, and he's like, you know, I'm just humbled to even be a part of the conversation, and it was such a great experience, and I loved every bit of working on the show and whatever, no matter how brief it was. And there's all these really great comments from people, and I just put up in there that I was very deserved. It's a fantastic scene. It's pivotal, and you know, in that moment when he says, I don't need Gail. I don't need Gail to be able to say her last things to me. I need to say things to my wife. And the way his voice cracked, like his acting in that scene was just fantastic. And I just wrote that as a comment on there. And you never think a famous person is gonna. And he liked it. So there you go.
Liked it.
He liked it.
So there, Andrew.
But however, we did go on and on talking about that scene. I'll cop to that, but it's only because I really loved it. So sorry, not sorry, Andy. Anyway, so he continues and says that Abby's dad is the, quote, only guy on the planet who can make a cure is nonsense anyway. I kind of agree with that. How would the Fireflies, who are not scientists, be able to judge this? In the game, he is a surgeon and once studied biology. He is not even a specialist. The Fireflies never explain how they actually came to the conclusion that he is so special. Excuse me. The Fireflies never... I think he told them, so they let him do his experiments on humans. He wants to be the savior of humankind, and the Fireflies want to believe in what he tells them. Interesting. If Ellie wants to sacrifice her life to save humanity, she should go to a Fedra base. Those guys have far better equipment and scientists than a Firefly underground hospital, so her chance is still there. But it's easier to blame Joel for having ruined it, of course. Greetings from Germany, Andy. And P.S. I'm fine with the series ending soon. I listened to 3 podcasts about it. It's fun, but it gets a little slow, so I'm glad it will end soon. Excuse me. Well, I'm sorry that you're fine that the series is ending. And I'm sad that we won't hear from you probably week to week, because I know there's some series that he has been following Dead City, though, so we'll probably still hear from Andy every week, so just not about this. So, but thank you for writing in, Andy. I'm curious, when you write in your feelings about this week's episode, I want to know how you feel about the season as a whole. Because it sounds like a couple of the things with how they interpreted it from the game have disappointed you. So I'd love for you to share how you feel about the season as a whole when you write in. But once again, thanks again for writing in. We appreciate it every time you do. So thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on. I just don't want to say anything because he's gonna call me out. So I mean
he's gonna call you by your full name. Stephen.
That's right, and whenever anyone does that means I'm in trouble, and I don't like that. So yeah, it's I mean he raised some interesting points and all, but I'm gonna follow Thumper's mom, and if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Okay. Anyway, moving on. This is now feedback for this episode, 2.7, the season finale, and we got some feedback from, of course, our joke-telling superfan, and that's Erica Price. She sent it via the Facebook. So hello, Erica.
Hey, Erica.
And she goes, ugh, I can't believe it's the last episode. And then she goes, shimmer! I really hope they go get her. 3 days with no water is not good. And then, oh, good, she's been looked in on. Thank tiny baby infant Jesus. I really thought Jesse voted yes when the council voted. That boat has a working motor. So it's very, very stream of conscious right here. And I know you even, you mentioned that too, that she's like, she finds this motorboat that it has an engine, it has gas, and it runs. Of course, what are the odds? She goes on to say, the only thing that took me out of the episode was the John boat popping up after being swamped. Nope. After it fills with water, I feel like it's done for, right? And that's kind of the thing I said, that, this massive wave comes, Ellie kind of turns to try and avoid it, and she gets like knocked off the boat, and you think, well, that boat sunk, or, the wave just, it washed over it and it's done. And then when Ellie crawls to shore, the boat is like beached on the shore right next to her.
In perfect shape, nothing's wrong with it.
Yeah, and it still runs and all that stuff. So yeah, I agree with you. I thought the same thing. I'm like, well, that's the end of that boat. And I'm like, wait a minute, there it is. So yeah, that was a little weird. Then she goes, wow, is that Gimli blowing the horns at Helm's Deep? And she has the crying emoji. Yeah, it was that kind of deep kind of horn sound, right?
Yep.
Yeah, good call. And then she goes, oh, it's the Seraphites back in their village. I'm not sure why we needed this island scene. We don't either.
Right.
She goes, I love how she uses Joel's map trick here with Owen and Mel. Yes, I did too. I pointed that out. It's a nice callback.
It is.
Oh, wow. 2 for 1. I think she's talking about the shot. Right through Owen, right through, past Mel's neck and into the wall. Yeah. And then she goes, ugh, 3 for 1.
Yeah.
Because of the baby. And then she goes, oh, hell, that's awful. But really, she can't do this. What would she do with a preterm infant? And that's kind of what we were saying, is that if she cut it out, what? It's like, and then she goes, it would likely die anyway. So sad, though. I'm glad Ellie and Jesse got to talk things out. And then now she writes in all caps, because now he's also dead. Oh my God. And then she goes, it's Abby. Shirt. Did Ellie see Dina? Is that why she's yelling, no, 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 no? Back to Seattle, day 1. And then she goes, side note, after a rewatch, I noticed that Abby's neck in the theater scene has rope burns around it, and I don't remember seeing that in episode 2. The backstory will be interesting, and all I can say is over and alls. She finishes up with that next paragraph going, the series continues to blow me away with its storytelling, cinematography, and score. They've really brought this to life from the video game tendrils to the small screen, and I've loved every minute, even if I did do several very ugly cries.
Yes.
And then she finishes up by saying, here's a great whale joke. What's a whale's favorite movie? And I mean, my thought would be Free Willy, but what do I know? And she goes on to say, the answer is The Humpback of Notre Dame.
Aww.
Get it?
I get it.
That's so silly. You're so silly, Erica.
Yeah.
Anyway, amazing feedback, very fun, and I think we're right there with you on a lot of thoughts. So yeah, that's
Oh yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for writing in, Erica. Always fun to read your stuff. So,
Hmm.
she's also right there with us on Dead City as well. So,
Yes.
yeah. um, uh, just thank you for writing in. Your funny stuff always just makes us look forward to your feedback every week. So thanks so much, Erica. I appreciate it. Next up, we heard from someone we haven't heard from in a while. So Bev wrote in. Thanks, Bev. And she left her thoughts via the Facebook.
Hey, Bev.
Yeah. She says, another great season. The acting has been amazing. What a shocking note to end on. My jaw was on the floor. I have to break it to my husband that this was the season finale. He's not going to be happy. He hates cliffhangers. Well, it's a pretty big one. It's up there. It's up there. So yeah, I'm sorry that you're gonna have to break that bad news to your husband there, Bev.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it's no bueno.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You got to do it.
Got to do it. It has to be done. He's got to know that there's no episode next week, like Steve, who thought there were 8 and there's really only 7. So I get it.
I know.
The
hell.
I know. All right, so what's coming up on the podcast?
But the good news is, he only has like 19 months to wait.
Yeah,
so,
it's not too bad.
What
it's
is
not
that?
too bad. I mean, it's and what is time really? Who knows?
Exactly.
That was a little too deep for even us. So, coming up on the podcast, if you're not aware, we've also been covering Dead City in alternative nights. So, in the episode that's directly after this one, there'll be an episode for Dead City. And Dead City continues through the end of June. We're only halfway through Dead City. Haha. Remember when we were only halfway through Last of Us? And we were like,
yeah.
Oh, we're already halfway through, and now it's over. God, that went fast.
I remember when I thought we were halfway through, but we were actually more than halfway through. That was a fun moment.
You're like, episode 4, we still have 4 to go. No.
Not really, no. I'm sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. So coming up on the podcast for the next few weeks, we're going to continue our coverage of The Walking Dead, Dead City. So the next episode that'll show up in your feed will be our coverage of episode 4, which is feisty friendly. And then next week, we continue on in that episode 5. That title is The Bird Always Knows. So releasing tomorrow night will be our coverage of this week's Dead City episode. And then next week, Dead City will be all by its lonesome and then continue on for a few more weeks after that. So that's what's coming up on the podcast. But possibilities for the future, when Dead City is finished, it finishes right around the time that a small little movie called 28 Years Later is going to premiere in the movie theaters. And I'm just saying, we covered 28 Days Later. And so we could make it a trilogy. We could cover 28 weeks and then move on to the years and cover that as well. But just curious, I put it out there on the socials as well. If anybody be interested in us covering that movie, because I'm sure we're going to see it. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Also, I wanted to put out a little recommendation for people who enjoy the apocalyptic tales like I do, but there's a series that just released recently on Netflix, and it's from Argentina, and it's based off of a comic series or a
book,
graphic novel series called, and I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but it's called The Eternaut.
That's what I would call it, yes.
Yeah, Eternaut. And it's a really quick one. It's only 6 episodes. I still have a couple more to go, but I dove in Friday night, I think, and binged a few episodes. It's really, really good. It's a very, it's as things fall apart. which I think is fantastic. Like that's the really interesting thing, is how people act, react, what they do as things are falling apart. So I think it's fascinating, and I highly recommend it. I think it's really, really great. And like I said, it's only 6 episodes, so it's a quick binge on Netflix. So check it out. I think you guys will like it. Have you watched it yet?
I've watched most of episode 1. I watched it about maybe 2 weeks ago when it came out. I think it was just released like last month or something.
Yeah, it's very new.
And I started to watch it, and then I got away from it, so I haven't come back. I like it. I think it's really interesting, like you said, because it's so much of right at the beginning when you're watching the whole, all the organized society kind of crumbling, and you're seeing how people, how do they act when the lights don't work and the phone doesn't work, and all that. And I find that to be that's what I'm the most interested in about the apocalypse. Not that, after everything's gone isn't interesting. It is, but I want to see, how does society fall apart? So
exactly. It's kind of nihilistic to think that way, but it's still how, when it falls apart, it's less about like the falling apart, and it's more how do people cope with it, and what do they do, and how do they try and keep going on as normally as possible without the things they're used to having. So jump back into it. Keep plugging. It gets even better. Episode 1, it's like it's setting things up, but episode 2 gets really good, and 3 keeps going. So cool. I fully recommend. So I hope others will jump on that bandwagon. So very, very, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else we need to chat about before we wrap this behemoth up?
The only thing I'd say is that I just noticed today, whether it was announced today or not, but the Music Box Theater here in Chicago on July 15th, which is still several moons away, but is approaching, they are going to have at least one showing of, and I believe it's a 35 millimeter print, so it's an actual film print of George Romero's Day of the Dead for its 40th anniversary. So nice. that would be awesome. I haven't seen that in a theater on film like that since it came out 40 years ago. So that would be fun to revisit that. So I think I might find myself sitting in one of those seats on July 15th. Whether, if you want to come along, you're welcome to, but we'll have to see. Like I said, it's down the road a bit, so we have a lot of time.
Oh, yeah. And clearly we have covered covered that movie on this podcast. So you guys, I'll put a link in the show notes to our coverage of Day of the Dead, and you'll have to listen to our coverage for sure, and get yourselves ready if you're in the Chicago area to go see that on the 15th. Fantastic.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love
so
it.
Anyway, yeah.
All right, so that's going to do it for us this week, folks. We look forward to chatting with you again next week, where, like I said, our continuing coverage of Walking Dead: Dead City will continue through the month of June, but we look forward to chatting you then. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, they just don't work.
To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
It'll be like a re-education.
Yes, you know what I mean?
So
you'll come out next week and you'll be like, welcome to the podcast. My name is Diana Driscoll, and I am here to talk about the show. Let us get started with the action. Welcome, Steve. And I'll be like, hello?